The hero stands tall with a massive sword, declaring he spent a whole month training to become a savior. A voice warns him not to say he wasn't cautioned, but the boy brushes it off with a casual, "Yeah, yeah." The goated man leans on his weapon, telling the hero not to lose to a regular old dude while two girls watch from the sidelines, sweat beading on their brows. The hero plants his feet and shouts, "Here I come," as the sharp stomp of his boots echoes and he unleashes a wild swing. The massive blade screams through the air, while the two girls watching from the sidelines freeze, sweat beading on their brows. "He's fast!" The girl with glasses gasps, eyes wide with shock. The hero swings his sword, a blur of motion that cuts the air, and the goated man watches, impressed by the speed gained in just a month. The hero grins, convinced he's landed a hit. "Gotcha," he shouts, but the goated man doesn't even blink. "Like hell you did." Before the hero can celebrate, the goated man steps in and kicks him squarely, sending the hero flying backward. The hero is sent reeling, eyes wide. What? A massive kick sends the hero flying backward, his body contorting midair as the goateed man stands firm, sword in hand. The hero crashes to the ground, landing upside down with a heavy thud, staring up at the sky while the man looks down, hands on hips, introducing himself as just a boring office worker. The hero's mind races, the thought slipping through his shock. At least, he was supposed to be the hero. The two girls watching from the sidelines freeze, their jaws dropping as they witness the crushing reality of the fight. The goated man didn't even flinch as the hero's blade screamed through the air. Sure, you'd probably overwhelm castle knights with pure speed, but that kind of straight-line movement's easy to deal with. The announcer's voice cracked through the arena, shouting, "Next!" He looked at the fallen hero with a smirk. "Come on, he's just a middle-aged dude, right? As for how the hell this all started..." The goateed man leans back, sword resting against his shoulder, a smirk playing on his lips. A girl leaps behind him, excitement radiating from her wide eyes. An old man, second time around, stronger than any high school hero. That is the truth of this world. The confidence in his stance says it all. The spiky-haired man stares, jaw tight, eyes locked on the fallen hero. The blonde woman grips her staff, her expression sharp and unreadable. The girl with glasses clamps a hand over her mouth, stunned into silence by what she just witnessed. The arena holds its breath as the title stamps down. Chapter 1. About a month ago, the man admits it plainly. He was an idiot. Just a dumb, loyal mutt with a bleeding heart. A junior from work got into some trouble, and like a sucker, he stayed to help her out and got home late. On the way back, he ran into some high schoolers getting caught up in something. And of course, he just had to try and help. The office worker throws his arms wide, a confident grin splitting his face as he addresses the group. "Oh, brave heroes from another world," he declares, his voice echoing in the stone chamber. "We've been waiting for you." Shifts to the students, their faces frozen in shock. "Heroes," one stammers, eyes wide. "US!" Another gasps. "Again!" The third cries out, the word hanging in the air. And just like that, they were dragged into this world without a choice. Epicalis, the princess of the Lokara's kingdom, stands tall and introduces herself to the group. A summoned student beside her sweats nervously, already anticipating the script. "Let me guess," he mutters. "The world's about to be taken over by some demon lord or something?" The princess confirms the grim reality without missing a beat. At this very moment, their world is falling under the demon lord's control. The crowd kneels in desperation as she turns to the students, and only a hero can stop him, right? Only the chosen heroes can defeat the demon lord, she insists, begging that. The dark-haired student stares, his mind reeling from the sudden summons. "Huh? You two?" he thinks, eyes darting across the group. Beside him, the blonde student breaks the silence, squinting at the others in the room. "So the heroes are this serious-looking dude and the gal-looking chick?" he mutters, trying to sort out who the princess meant. The girl with glasses shifts uncomfortably, her thoughts tumbling over the absurdity of the situation. "Even if I got dragged into this by accident, What about that quiet girl over there? She wonders, glancing at the blonde girl sitting nearby. The blonde student stands up, throwing his hands out in protest. Princess Epicalis stands tall, declaring that people from other worlds are gifted with exceptional abilities, insisting that with a little training, the two of them will defeat the demon lord in no time. Kana eyes the boy with glasses, murmuring that two heroes were supposed to be the deal. The blonde girl cuts in, pointing out the confusion. What about her and the old guy from the water town? The office worker sits cross-legged, agreeing that this is all one-sided, while the nearby voice notes he likes her strong will. Kana grabs Futa by the collar, shouting his name, demanding he speak up. She screams that they're being forced to fight a demon lord without even— She's right, the student admits, sweat beading on his brow. There's nothing in it for us. His classmate shouts back, families worried, demanding they be sent back and someone else summoned. The office worker chuckles, calling it a fair demand, impressed by the student's nerve. My guy, he thinks. The princess stares, then smiles, suggesting they move to a warmer spot. The basement's chilly, she says. Let's talk somewhere else. The princess's voice cuts through the stone air, polite but commanding. Heroes, she calls out, may I ask your names? Futa Okude stammers first, sweat beading on his brow. Futa Okude. Kana Himura follows, her voice tight. Kana Himura. The princess turns, her long hair cascading as she addresses them with a formal honorific. Futa-sama. Kana-sama. But the formality doesn't warm the room. The girl with glasses can't help but think it, the cynicism plain in her expression. So we're just chopped liver, huh? Princess Epicalis delivers the crushing truth without blinking. Sorry to say, but you two weren't chosen. You'll only return home after the demon lord's defeated. The office worker protests that they didn't have a choice either, but the princess explains the grim tradition: when the kingdom's in peril, they follow the legend and summon outsiders. She drops to her knees, hands clasped in desperate prayer. So I beg of you, will you please defeat the neighboring country under control of the demon lord's army? Kana freezes, her braids swaying as the realization hits. Wait, now the target's a neighboring country? The hell is this? Futa's mind 3 moons hang in the night sky, a triple moonlight that breaks the logic of their home world. The group stands frozen, backs to the camera, staring up at the impossible sight. 3 moons? The shock ripples through them before they even turn. Faces pale with disbelief, the students look at one another. A girl whispers the confirmation they all fear. It's real. Another girl clutches her hands, the truth settling heavy in her chest. This really is another world. The air is thick with the weight of the impossible, the 3 moons above offering no comfort, only the cold, hard proof of their exile. Futa Okude processes the impossible sight, the 3 moons locking into his mind as he realizes the scale of this place. He mutters that it's different from their world. Epicalis steps in, her voice calm but firm, explaining that traveling between worlds isn't something that happens easily. The other students nod, accepting the logic but feeling the weight of it. One of them worries about getting steamrolled by the situation, wondering if the reality is hitting them too hard. Epicalis decides it's time to step in and clarify the mess. She tells them straight, the remaining 2 don't have any powers. Only 2 of them. The blonde girl gasps, the realization hitting her hard. You're saying the castle will just protect them? The boy beside her echoes the shock, his voice trembling. Them? The girl with the headband demands an answer, her eyes narrowing. What the hell's that supposed to mean? Futa Okude steps in, his hands raised in protest. Whoa, now. Pretty cold toward anyone who's not a hero, huh? Princess Epicalis doesn't blink. She confirms the cruel distinction without hesitation. The 2 of you will be treated with utmost care and protected at the castle. Exactly. Futa Okude forces a calm. Hey, you! What's your name? A girl with long hair calls out, breaking the tension. Riku answers with a confident grin, introducing himself as Riku Takayanagi. He turns to the group, confirming he knows the girl with braids is Kana and the other guy is Futa. Then he zeroes in on the girl with glasses, the quiet one. So what about you, quiet girl? She blurts out her name. Mizukake Egohara. Riku leans in, pressing his advantage with a heavy comment. Mizukake's in the toughest spot out of all of us. Hang in there. Mizukake freezes, Kana screams in the face of the situation, her voice cracking with fury as she demands answers. She grabs Futa by the collar, telling him to stop complaining just because he thinks he lacks powers. Riku steps into the silence, his face grim as he delivers the hard truth to the group. He declares that no one else in this world can kill the Demon Lord. Only the two of them can. Mizukake asks Riku what he thinks he's doing, and he reminds her that she was told they'd be protected, implying she isn't. Mizukake wonders what they're whispering about, her mind reeling at the implications. Once we've powered up, Riku declares, sweat beading on his brow. The goateed office worker watches, thinking, smart kid, definitely not an idiot. No one from this world can stop us, Riku continues, his voice steady. And to control someone with that much power, the office worker leans in. And to control someone with that much power. Riku, his eyes shadowed, finishes, they'll need. Mizukake, glasses reflecting the dim light, whispers, hostages. Kana's eyes widen in horror. So they're taking the two of us on purpose. Mizukake clamps a hand over her mouth, hissing, "You're too loud!" A muffled Riku grips Mizukake's shoulders, steadying her panic as she realizes the grim possibility. He tells her not to let them pull her into their rhythm, that it's one possibility. She stammers his name, Mr. Takiyanagi. He tells her to just call in Riku. Mizukake asks why he's so calm, like he's been through this before. Riku smiles, eyes half shut, saying old guys like him have seen some things. The princess welcomes them, saying they've arrived. Riku warns the group to keep their guard up no matter where they're taken. The door creaks open for them to step inside. Roasted poultry and tiered cakes fill the hall, a lavish spread of royal indulgence that defies their meager lives back home. They stand inside, the grandeur of the space hitting them like a wave. Hoo-wah! The princess gestures to the feast, inviting them to eat. Kana's eyes sparkle as she reaches for a cupcake. Wow! But before she can take a bite, Riku yanks her back. She stumbles, dropping the treat, and snaps at him. What's your problem? Riku spins around, face sweating, and lies through his teeth. My bad, tripped a bit. He leans in close, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Don't eat food from people you're not sure are allies. Kana freezes, the realization hitting her like ice water. Riku looks away, fumbling for an excuse. A lavish spread of roasted poultry and tiered cakes fills the hall, the long table groaning under the weight of royal indulgence, while Riku stands at the head like a sentinel. He cuts through the hospitality with a sharp question, his voice tight. You mentioned the neighboring country earlier, not the Demon Lord? You're telling us to defeat the neighboring country? Princess Epicalis doesn't blink, her long hair cascading over her shoulders as she lays out the grim reality. Right now, every nation is fully engaged fighting the Demon Lord's forces. Ours, Locaris Kingdom, included. The students lean in, their confusion. The kingdom's resources are crumbling under the weight of a double threat. Negotiations with the neighboring nation of Eratoria have collapsed into a cold war, leaving food and goods unstable while soldiers struggle to manage the Demon Lord's forces and watch the border simultaneously. Princess Epicalis lays out the grim calculus. At this rate, Locaris will bleed dry. She reveals the suspicion that Eratoria has already sided with the Demon Lord's army. The skepticism hits immediately. Fuda Okude nods at the logic but draws the line at the target. All right, I get the situation. But if the students recoil in horror at the realization of what they've been asked to do, Kana whispers that they be killing people. Futa stammers, asking if they're really going to kill. The princess stands at the head of the table, her expression unreadable, her long hair falling over her shoulders as she explains the grim necessity. She tells them they must act as a deterrent. Futa asks if that means they're just a deterrent. Epicalis confirms she understands their concern, but the stakes are too high. She lays out the strategy. If Eratoria learns that someone can defeat the Demon Lord, it might change their mind. The two heroes need to get stronger to make that happen. From an outsider's view, that's exactly what it looks like, Princess Epicalus says, her gaze steady. But I have a duty to protect my people. The goateed office worker leans back, hands behind his head, a smirk playing on his lips. So you flash your strength and talk peace. Epicalus stares back, unblinking. Kana tugs at Riku's sleeve, whispering Riku. In the quiet room. The office worker watches them, realizing there's no point trying to squeeze more info out of them right now. The goateed office worker leans in, his tone final. Fine, the two of them will undergo training. Kana nods eagerly, breathless with relief. Why, yes! But the office worker raises a hand, his expression darkening. But, he cuts through the room's tension. We're not promising to help this kingdom just yet. The nobleman recoils, his face twisting in panic. Then you're giving power to people who could become our enemies? The noblewoman points a shaking finger. You bastard! The Princess Epicalus stands still, her gaze steady. Very well. She accepts the terms. The goateed office worker presses his advantage. He demands 2 double rooms immediately, his voice cutting through the tension. We're not letting anyone be alone, ever. Princess Epicalus accepts the terms without a flicker of anger. Understood, she says softly. You've only just arrived here. It's only natural for you to be cautious. The grand hall settles into a quiet lull as the princess confirms the schedule. Preparations for their training will take a few days, and until then, they are told to rest and recover. Lady Epicalus, as you instructed, they've been escorted to their rooms. The servant reports, but a nobleman standing nearby frowns. A commoner making demands of Lady Epicalus, that man is a serious problem. Epicalus admits that if it were just the kids, they could have easily brought them over to their side, but that one adult acting like their guardian is a complication. Still, even if the legends say so, the noble asks if those children really have the power to defeat the demon lord. He looks confused when told to have faith. Princess Epicalus leans forward, her smile sharp and inviting as she insists they just need to trust her. Riku stands behind her, silent and unmoving, shifts to the dorm room where the students are settling in. Futa calls out from the bed, asking if the man is really Takayanagi. Mizukake sits on the edge of the mattress, glasses glinting, and questions the office worker's paranoia. She asks if he isn't going a little overboard with the whole suspicious thing. Riku tightens his grip on Kana, leaning in with a tired smirk. He reminds her he told them to call him Riku, then points out that she was just in. Riku leans in, eyes sharp, whispering that the princess is hiding something. People who want to make deals on their own terms always talk like that, he says. He reminds them they're in another world now, where Japanese laws and logic don't apply. The students absorb the warning, their minds racing through the possibilities. They could force us to say yes, hit us with a binding spell, and it's game over. That kind of thing's totally possible. Magic. Right, this is another world, so of course there's magic. Riku cuts through the fear with a plan. Let's have a strategy meeting, Futa stammers, asking if that's what he means. Mizukake stares at him, incredulous. But why do you know so much about how things work here? Futa leans over the railing, eyes wide, asking if they really want to die in this random fantasy world. Kana and Mizukake freeze, the word hanging in the air. Die. Riku cuts through the hesitation, his face grim in the shadows. I mean it exactly like it sounds. We die here. The students stare back, sweat beading on their faces as Riku demands they get smart if they want to stay alive. A sharp tension snaps in the room. Riku turns his back to them, hands raised. But first, he stands by the door, rolling up his sleeves with a calm, dangerous focus. Riku closes his eyes, savoring the sensation. Ah, been a while. He feels something he never sensed back in their world. Mizukake feels it too. Yes. His voice trembles with the weight of the discovery. There's mana in this world. Riku's eyes snap open, burning with sudden purpose. He thrusts his palms forward, cutting the air. K-air voyant! E-air! Voyant! E-a-air! Riku closes his eyes and exhales, the word all right slipping out with finality. He turns to the group, his back to the room, and explains the silence around them. No one is eavesdropping, he says. Either they lack the ability to listen in, or they're just overconfident. Futa leans in, asking what he means. Kana cuts through the quiet, her voice sharp with curiosity. How does he know that? Riku gestures casually, the answer obvious to him. What do you mean, how? Magic, obviously. The students stare, the realization hitting them all at once. Futa's jaw drops as the question escapes him. You can... The word chunibayo stings, and Riku flinches. The thought, the hell? Flashing through his mind. Futa doesn't hold back, calling him out for acting like a cringe old man who thinks he can use magic just because he's in a fantasy world. Riku's patience snaps. He tells the kid he's loud as hell and offers to prove it with obvious magic. Futa dares him, go ahead and try if you even can. Riku raises his hand, admitting he isn't sure if the spell works here, but he commits to the incantation. Summon. Riku raised his hand high, the students watching in silence. Futa scoffed from the side. See, nothing's happening, Yusuke! Before his voice cut off. Misukake watched with wide, worried eyes. Suddenly, a massive, swirling cloud erupted behind Riku. He froze, sweat beading on his brow. Wait, what? He stammered. A sharp crack echoed as a hand snapped its fingers. The swirling cloud vanishes, replaced instantly by a girl with pointed ears screaming in pure panic. She materializes out of thin air, her mouth wide open in a shriek that sends shockwaves through the room. The students recoil, eyes wide and mouths agape, as the magic spell lands on a living person instead of a weapon. Riku stands frozen, his confident smirk wiped away by the sudden appearance of a stranger. The summoning has worked, but the result is nothing like anyone expected. The elf girl stretches her arms wide, declaring she slept great. She blinks, looking around the room with a confused frown. Huh? Wait, what is this place? She spots the man standing there and freezes. Riku smiles, confident and calm. The girl's eyes widen as recognition hits. Arai! She launches herself forward, tackling him into the wall. Arai Kuyu-yu! The students scream in shock as the office worker is crushed under the weight of the summoned elf. Futa stammers, eyes wide, asking what in the world this is, while Mizukake demands to know if Riku did this. Kana's voice trembles as she demands to know how he can use magic at all. Riku just smiles, glad it worked in this world too. He leans in, claiming he was a hero in another world when he was their age. The students stare, the word situation hanging in the air, Mizukake noting it sounds similar. Riku insists he went through a real similar situation. Futa cuts through the bragging immediately, telling him not this one. Riku flashes a confident grin, his hand outstretched as the elf girl hovers nearby. Which means, this is the middle-aged geezer's round. He leans in, eyes gleaming with experience. My second isekai run. The students stare, their shock palpable as they process the words. WHA, the view shifts to the night sky, where 3 moons hang over the dark silhouette of a castle. The sound of their collective horror rings out. WHAAAAAAAAAT. Silence hangs over the castle as the night deepens. The students process the shock of the summoning, the reality of the world settling into their bones. Time moves forward, the day's chaos giving way to the quiet anticipation of what comes next. 3 days have passed since Riku Takayanagi first arrived in this other world for the second time. He sits perched on a fence, crunching an apple with a calm rhythm. Below, the 2 high school heroes are finally putting in the work, their training having begun in earnest. Riku remains a silent guardian, overlooking the effort as the castle looms in the distance. Futa Okude is introduced as the serious-looking, pretty boy, a figure of quiet strength. He possesses a strong core and doesn't seem like the type to be easily swayed. At least, that's what the story claims. Or so he said, but he likes running, though he isn't actually good at sports. The boy stands with a sword in hand, raising it high before bringing it down in a sharp slash. Steel bites into the straw target as he swings, the motion cutting through the air. A few figures watch him train, their expressions fixed on his effort. The narrative lingers on the contrast between his reputation and his actual abilities. Steel bites into the straw target, sending splinters flying as the impact shudders through the air. An elf girl watches from the side, eyes wide. 3 men nearby recoil, their faces twisting in awe. "What incredible sword pressure!" rings out first, followed by "To be like this on the first day!" and finally, "This is the power of a hero!" Futa grits his teeth, swinging the blade with all his might, a roar tearing from his throat as he channels every ounce of strength into the strike. The straw target explodes outward, splinters scattering like shrapnel as the blade bites deep. Futa lets out a primal roar, the sound tearing from his throat as he holds the weapon aloft in victory. The students watch in stunned silence, the terrifying truth settling in. At this rate, even Eratria won't stand a chance. Himura Kana steps into the light, a modern-day high school girl with a Gyaru vibe, yet the way she holds herself together is admirable. She's probably scared of being in another world, but she doesn't show it. She swings the weapon hard, breaths ragged, ha, 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 sweat flying with every strike. A woman watches, murmuring that a girl using a spear is how rare. Kana pauses, eyes widening. "Oh? In my country, the naginata, a type of spear, is actually considered a woman's weapon." Kana swings the naginata with surprising force, the blade cutting through the air. Observers nearby gape in disbelief at the strength coming from such slender arms, shouting that the girl hero is amazing. Mizukaki watches from the side, her expression skeptical. She wonders if Kana is just copying moves from a game, thinking there's no way she actually pulled it off. Kana doesn't stop, shouting "Ya!" and "Ha!" as she drives the weapon forward again. The straw target explodes outward, splinters scattering as the blow lands true. Victory is in sight. "We can beat Eratoria," rings out from the training ground, the muscular hero raising a fist in triumph while the girl beside him shouts back a resounding "Yes!" Riku watches from the shadows, his expression unreadable as he muses that he doesn't know if this is what they call hero potential, though there's no doubt they've received some kind of blessing. He leans back against the trees, comparing the two to his own past self. Honestly, compared to when he was summoned to another world before, these two move way better. He remembers how weak he was back then, the memory fading as he silence grips the dormitory until Mizukaki waits at the table, holding a glass of water while Gacha floats nearby. Riku leans in with a wide grin. "I'm back," he declares. Mizukaki's eyes widen, her composure shattering as a scream tears from her throat. Mizukaki nearly screams when Riku materializes behind her, gasping that he scared her. The group marvels at the water magic she just demonstrated, marveling that she mastered it so quickly. Mizuki Iguhara proves to be talented with water, a stark contrast to her plain indoor hobbies. The heroes tease her about her chuny tendencies, and Mizukake blushes, secretly thinking that's the best response she's ever received. Mizukake floats above Riku, shaking her head as she refuses the next step. Riku insists they start with the other elements first, ignoring her hesitation. Mizukake perches on his shoulder, asking why he's acting so high and mighty, but then clarifies her own nature. She is an artificial spirit, Riku created from those very elements. Riku turns his profile toward her, asking why she can use magic if she isn't a hero. Mizuki Eguhara bursts through the door, shouting that she's home with a grin that lights up the room. Futa Okudera and Kana Himura are already there, Futa marveling at how fast she returned while Kana notes she doesn't even look tired. Mizuki beams, telling them the training felt just like club activities, and despite all the movement, she wasn't out of breath at all. Riku steps forward, his expression shifting from relaxed to serious. Mizuki screams the question, shattering the serious atmosphere in an instant. "Futa! Do you like Kana or Mizuki? Chan more?" The words detonate in the silence. Kana, Futa, and Mizuki freeze, sweat dripping down their faces as their eyes go wide. The silence stretches, heavy and awkward before the blush hits all three of them at once. Mizuki shouts that Kana is the better match, deflecting the choice with a shout. Kana panics, asking what the heck is going on, while Mizuki demands to know why her name is being used so casually. Futa wonders if the three of them are childhood friends, admitting he was just wondering. Kana insists she's just a plain girl who'd be a bother to be with, leaving Futa confused as both girls give way to each other. "Like you can talk?" Gacha hovers above Riku, her voice sharp with challenge. Riku just smirks, waving off the question of their past worlds. He turns to the group, his back to them, and his expression hardens. "I don't want these kids going through what I did." He cuts through the tension, pivoting to the real issue. "I'm leaving this country." The words drop like a hammer, and Kana screams in panic, running forward with her mouth wide open. "You're running away by yourself!" she shrieks, while Futa and Mizuki just stare, stunned into silence. Riku holds up a hand to calm the storm, insisting it's only temporary. "It's something that'll happen a month from now," he explains, his expression tight. Riku leans in and demands to know what the princess actually told them. Futa answers first, stating they need to defeat the Demon King. Mizuki presses for the next step, and Kana finishes the grim sequence, take down the neighboring country under the Demon King's control. Riku confirms that's exactly the order of operations. He explains he can't tell who the real enemy is without seeing for himself. Mizuki's eyes widen as the truth sinks in. The promise of peace was just a cage to keep them from leaving. Futa's face tightens with horror at the implication. If they stay, they'll end up killing people. Riku cuts through the panic with cold clarity, telling them that a month of training means they'll be strong enough to take on the Royal Knights themselves. He calls out, "Futa!" then turns his attention to the girls. Gacha floats, voice rising in panic, demanding to know what happens to her, but Riku silences her with a stern command to stay hidden in her room so the castle guards don't spot her. Gacha hovers nearby, grumbling in annoyance at the order. Riku pivots, slamming his hand on the table to demand all three of the students hand over their smartphones now that the plan is set. Mizuki protests that there's no signal in this world anyway. Mizuki squeaks, "Yikes!" Kana mutters, "Well, with that personality, yeah." Mizuki adds, "You two are kinda similar, huh?" The smartphones float in the air. Riku demands, "Just hand it over." The girls ask, "So what are you even gonna do?" Riku smiles, "Just watch." 4 smartphones float in mid-air, suspended by invisible force as the word transformation flashes above them. Mizuki tilts her head, a question mark floating in her confusion as she stares at her screen. Kana checks hers and frowns, voicing the group's disappointment that nothing has changed at all. Futa stands between them, eyes wide, watching the impossible display unfold without a sound. Kana grips the device, urging Mizuki to test the connection. She dials, announcing she's calling Mizuki. The device rings. Kana hears, "Hello, on the line." Mizuki answers, her voice clear. Mizuki thinks modifying the smartphone was a first, but it worked. Riku explains that charging isn't an issue since the device draws in ambient mana. He notes the range is still uncertain, but Kana finds the convenience irresistible, wishing her own world had such technology. When Gacha asks why they can't just use teleportation magic like jump, Riku insists they use the phones to stay in touch while they're apart. Mizuki gasps in shock that Riku can do that too. Riku seals the deal with a casual countdown, locking them into a 1-month deadline. Futa's face tightens with panic as he demands to know where the old man is actually going. Riku just waves him off, ordering the boy to get stronger while he's gone. A confused murmur hangs in the air before Riku flashes a grin, rushing it off as nothing more than a simple walk. Mizuki calls out from the doorway, asking if he really needs no escort. Her question hangs in the air for a heartbeat before she yelps in shock, the old man already gone. Mizuki grumbles that Riku is a weird old man, but Kana isn't satisfied with just that. She calls out to Mizuki, asking what kind of hero he really was. Mizuki beams, declaring him strong and quick-witted. Then the mood shifts, as Mizuki leans in, her voice dropping to a whisper as she hints at a terrifying past, claiming that by the time Riku was their age, he was already something far beyond them. Mizuki's whisper finishes its descent, the final words slicing through the room, killing people. Kana and Futa freeze, their eyes wide with the sudden, terrible realization. Then the atmosphere shifts instantly. A voice cuts through the stunned silence, indifferent to the shock. Now then. The conversation moves on, leaving the students to grapple with the monster hiding behind the old man's grin. But first, I really should figure out which room belongs to the princess. Riku moves through the castle corridors, stepping past a guard without breaking stride. He pauses to watch two figures sparring in the courtyard, his gaze sharp as he takes in the skill level of this castle's knights and soldiers. He needs to know what he's dealing with, especially since the world he was summoned to before might have had a different magical system from this one. Riku crouches low in the bushes, eyes scanning the grounds, his mind already racing through the possibilities. "Get up!" a knight roars, driving the student down into the dirt with a brutal strike. Mizuki joins the fray, sword raised, barking, "You call that effort?" Riku watches from the bushes, noting the lack of armor and the pain the student feels. Training methods haven't changed much, he thinks, the tension thick in the air. Mizuki unleashes magic, shouting, "Fire Butte!" and "Hail Cluster!" as the spells fly. A knight screams the command, "Aqua Lance!" as a beam of water erupts from his hands. He turns on the trainee, barking orders to be faster, sharper, harder, calling the boy a weakling and insisting it's all about. From the bushes, Riku watches the display, his mind dissecting the mechanics. He realizes it's just channeling mana into an image and releasing it. Simple enough. Before he can finish the thought, a voice cuts through the air. "You, there! What are you doing?" Riku freezes, sweat beading on his temple as he admits his magic concealment usually works better than this. A voice booms from the shadows, shouting, "Hey, you!" and commanding him to walk over slowly. He complies, hands raised in surrender, as he stands before the woman with long blonde hair. The knight stands tall in gleaming armor, sword gripped tight, her long blonde hair framing a stern face. She glances at the intruder, a fleeting thought crossing her mind that he's actually quite good-looking, before her gaze hardens. "I asked what you're doing here," she demands, the question hanging heavy in the air. Riku is already in a tight spot. The standoff hangs unresolved. "I ask what you're doing," the knight demands, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. She steps closer, the gleam of her armor catching the light, and the realization hits her like a thunderclap. "HM, you're that otherworlder everyone's talking about, aren't you?" Riku feels the trap snapping shut around his ankles. "Now then, how should I talk my way out of this?" His hands rise in a gesture of surrender, but his mind races for a cover story. "Well, actually," the words stumble out, weak and uncertain against the weight of her suspicion. Riku's voice cracks as he blurts out the desperate lie. "I rushed out because I was about to piss myself, then I got lost." Pravas recoils, eyes widening in horror. "Wah, you bastard! Were you about to take a shit in the training field?" Riku scrambles to clarify, sweat dripping down his temple. No, I mean, not yet. I haven't done it." He winces internally at his own phrasing. "Ugh, such crude wording." Pravas turns on her heel, dismissing the grossness for now. "Chi, follow me." The knight's hostility dissolves into relief as she thanks Riku, admitting he saved her life. The student standing beside her grins, quipping that they couldn't let him soil the training grounds with his earlier excuse. The knight internally winces at the filth of the story, noting the sharp contrast between his good looks and his dirty mouth. Riku tries to cut the conversation short, suggesting they head back before things get worse. The knight stops him, demanding his name before they go anywhere. Riku introduces himself as Takayanagi Riku, though he insists everyone just call him Riku. He waves a hand casually, asking for her name in return. She smiles, revealing her own name, Pravas, captain of the White Light Knight Order. Riku assesses the knight standing before him, recognizing the authority in her stance immediately. He thinks to himself that she's definitely a captain tier, a realization that lands with a heavy thud. Captain Pravas turns inward, noting that the summoning ritual was beyond their jurisdiction, and assuming the princess will explain the situation eventually. Her gaze sharpens as she observes the state of the hero's training, noting that it seems pretty lax. Riku seizes the opening, playing the role of the confused old man. He asks if she really wasn't told she was the captain, his tone dripping with feigned surprise. Inside his head, he decides he might as well poke the bear, calculating that keeping the knight captain in the dark about the summoning must be pissing her off. He presses further, suggesting it would be better to send the knights straight into battle instead of relying on the hero. Pravas listens, her expression unreadable as she processes his words. "What would an otherworlder like you know?" Pravas snaps at Riku, her back turned to the old man. She pivots, voice rising, warning that the demon army will crush them if they don't resolve this fast. The pressure snaps her composure. "We know that!" she screams. The realization hits her instantly. A sharp gasp escapes her lips as she clamps a hand over her mouth. "Ah, my apologies. Peace depends on negotiations, but the nobles are already planning for war. They'll field the hero first, but if that fails, war it is." One man notes his old friend Nimros is in Eratoria's night order, while another smells something fishy about the whole situation. The kingdom has decided, regardless of their reluctance. In the hallway, Princess Epicalis spots the otherworldly guest with a polite smile, but the older noble beside her isn't pleased. He demands to know why Pravas detained the man without his order. The knight captain stammers, face flushing as she tries to salvage her cover story. She claims she was merely guiding him to the privy, calling out to the princess to save face. Inside, she marvels at the captain's duty, or perhaps the situation's absurdity, as the lie hangs heavy in the air. Pravas stands firm, reminding Riku that wandering freely is reserved for the hero alone. For the castle is the heart of the nation. Riku brushes off the warning with a casual smirk, complaining that she could have just let him find the toilet alone while he muses on making himself disliked enough to be kicked out within a month. Pravas sharpens her gaze, suggesting he should improve his summoning accuracy instead. An older nobleman steps in, shouting at Riku for his insolence, but the old man fires back. He points out the hypocrisy of summoning him without consent, only to drag him into their mess. Pravas stares back, her expression hardening into a silent, intense glare. Riku feels the chill of Pravas's glacial stare burning into his back, sweat trickling down his temple as he wonders if he's already hated enough to be expelled. Pravas narrows her eyes, her expression hardening into a silent judgment that freezes the air between them. The older nobleman steps in, admitting the otherworlder was right. He apologizes for the inconvenience of dragging Riku here without his consent. Riku concedes, admitting he went too far. The nobleman turns to Pravas, telling her to take custody of the man. Pravas bows her head, accepting the order with a sharp, "Understood." Riku leans into the pressure, his voice steady. "Old men got nothing to lose." Pravas bristles at the audacity, her eyes narrowing. "You're a scary one, no power, yet you talk back like that." Riku doesn't flinch, dropping the truth like a stone. "And the queen passed when the princess was young." Pravas freezes, her mind racing. His majesty is occupied. Riku pushes harder, eyes sharp. "Have they already stepped down?" Pravas says. "Speaking of which, I don't see the king or queen anywhere." Riku processes the silence. "I see." Before the moment can deepen, a voice cuts through the tension. "Captain Pravas? Otherworlder?" A maid bursts into view, eyes wide. "Since when were you outside?" Pravas drops the blunt truth on the maid, explaining the otherworlder was about to relieve himself in the open. The maid recoils in horror, scolding the knight captain for such crude language. Pravas doesn't even flinch, turning her attention back to Riku with a casual wave. She tells him to call a maid next time instead of wandering the halls, while Gotcha cheers for the captain from the sidelines. The student watches Pravas walk away, realizing the knight captain isn't the villain he assumed she was. A final thought lingers in the empty room, a muttered annoyance at the man who just left. Princess Epicalis vents her frustration over the otherworlder's insolence. She demands the older nobleman watch that arrogant mouth before she pivots to the real asset. She asks how the training for the two heroes is actually going, her eyes sharp with calculation. The older nobleman doesn't hide his admiration, noting their movements are far too refined for amateurs and that the legends seem true. Epicalis stands before the window, looking out at the kingdom she intends to save. She declares that once the fact of a hero's existence spreads, their morale will rise. Neighboring countries will tremble in fear. The nobleman clasps his hands together, a silent "ah" escaping him as the weight of the plan settles in. Epicalis clasps her hands together, eyes gleaming with a terrifying kind of anticipation. "I can't wait for war." The declaration lands like a hammer blow in the quiet room. The older nobleman beside her freezes, his composure shattering as he stammers out her name. Lady Epicalis. The weight of her ambition settles on him, heavy and undeniable. 1 month slips by over the castle ramparts. The heroes have spent 30 days sharpening their skills, and now they're ready to settle the score. They call out to Riku, reminding him he's had a whole month to prepare. They warn him not to complain if he loses. Riku just rides his board, brushing off the threat with a smirk. He claims a hero shouldn't lose to an ordinary old man. The board screeches to a halt. One of the students steps forward, sword raised, declaring he's coming to fight. The student lunges, sword flashing with blinding speed. Onlookers gasp, shouting that he's fast as they watch the attack come. The blade cuts through the air, but Riku doesn't flinch. He watches the motion, noting the incredible speed for only a month of training. Yet the stance remains sloppy. The student roars that he's got him, confident in the hit. Riku just shakes his head, his voice cutting through the noise to say he hasn't got anything at all. A boot snaps into the student's face, the impact cracking through the air. A sharp cry tears from the boy's throat as he stumbles backward, the force sending him flying. He tumbles through the air, arms flailing, before crashing down. Riku stands over the fallen student, his expression calm. He murmurs that speed alone might overwhelm castle knights, but straightforward movements are easy to counter. Another student steps forward grinning, insisting the opponent is just a middle-aged man. "Next," Riku demands. "All right, here I go." The girl with the ponytail grips her staff, her voice ringing out with determination. She leaps into the air, a blur of motion against the training ground. Beside her, a boy with a sword watches closely, his mind already analyzing her stance. He notes she's holding back, being cautious after seeing Futa fight. She lands with a heavy thud, boots kicking up dust, and points her weapon forward. "All right, come at me." She challenges the old man, but as the reality of the situation settles in, her eyes widen. Sweat beads on her forehead, and a look of shock washes over her face. The girl screams and lunges forward, her spear flashing through the air with a sharp cry. Onlookers watch the exchange, murmuring that they see the situation clearly. The analysis hits them. She holds an overwhelming advantage as long as she fights within her own range. The students holding spears remind everyone that spears have a wide attack range. The girl freezes, her eyes widening in confusion as the reality of the distance sets in. A boy beside her tries to interject, but the shock on her face cuts him off before he can finish. A boy leans in close to the girl, whispering a tactical tip. "Once you get close, your spear becomes weak." The sound of movement cuts through the air. The girl stands with her arms spread wide, screaming that it's so frustrating. "Damn it!" Riku stands calmly in the distance, watching her frustration. Mizuki steps up as the final challenger, her eyes wide with concentration. Riku stands ready, reminding her to use the magic he taught her. Gotcha hovers nearby, declaring it's finally their turn to shine as her master. Mizuki glances back, wondering what Gotcha and the others whispered about after training. She shouts her intent and thrusts her magic forward, sending a massive surge of energy crashing down. Riku stands his ground, admitting the boy's power is still absurdly strong. Riche quips that age hasn't dulled the old man's edge, wondering aloud if they can't even push Riku to use his real power. Riku raises a fist, grinning that he won't lose to kids anytime soon. Mizuki and Riche stare, realizing 5 years' worth of experience is etched into his posture. Riche wipes a bead of sweat, muttering he never got to say goodbye to his party back home. Mizuki presses him, asking if defeating the Demon King really sent him back to age 17. They call it reverted, but it was more like getting yeeted back. Riche remembers his classmates drifting away while he was gone. 5 years during puberty changes everything, and adding hero experience feels like a heavy toll. They're heading to the neighboring kingdom. Reconnaissance comes first, figuring out if they're even enemies before anything else. Before they leave, a hand extends from the shadows. Riche catches the object with a startled yelp, staring at the glinting metal. A kitchen knife? This is the gift? Mizuki flinches, looking at the blade like it's a viper. Riche grabs Mizuki tight, his face twisted in shock as the air around them crackles with sudden violence. A kitchen knife lies embedded in the earth nearby, blood pooling around the hilt as confusion ripples through the group. Fingers clamp hard around the handle, dark liquid dripping down the steel, but the grip belongs to Riku. He stands calm, a manic grin spreading across his face as Mizuki and Riche cling to his arm in horror. The silence settles. A pause hangs between them before the next chapter of their journey begins. The old man turns away, closing the door on this moment. A kitchen knife lies embedded in the earth, dark liquid pooling around the hilt. Riku kneels on the ground, his knees buckling as blood drips from his palms onto the soil. Riche reaches out, his voice cracking as he whispers the old man's name. Mizuki trembles, her body shaking with terror. Mizuki screams, "Riku-san," her face twisting in horror as the old man holds her tight. She stares at the black blood dripping from his hand, the dark liquid pooling around his fingers. Mizuki recoils, stumbling back with a gasp of disgust while Riku watches in shock. Riku wipes the sweat from his brow, grinning through the pain as he admits, "Well, he guesses that's about right." Riche's hands drip with dark fluid as light erupts from his palms. The spell name flashes in the air, rebirth, light of restoration. White particles swirl around his intense, shocked expression. Below, dark blood stains the wooden floor, contrasting with the magical glow. Riche stands frozen, whispering about the healing magic. Mizuki screams, terror in her eyes. She waves her hand, complaining about the scare and the weird feeling. Riche snaps that it's the point. Mizuki looks at her palm, the sensation of stabbing lingering. She sees the blood on the ground. She realizes they might have to fight humans. Riku warns them that if their first real battle comes, they might hesitate and die in the shock. Riche and Mizuki stare, horrified at the thought of killing people, of fighting humans. Riche nods, agreeing with the grim reality. A puddle of dark blood sits on the ground. Riku declares the cleanup complete, but a hand holding a knife appears, reminding them that if they want to survive, they must not hesitate. A hand grips the blade tight, the steel gleaming cold in the light. Riku's voice cuts through the silence, sharp and unyielding. "Don't think you can just cut off someone's arms or legs and get by. Eliminate the enemy completely." Mizuki stands behind Riche, glasses reflecting the tension. "If you do, the one who dies will be you." Riche holds the knife steady, the weight of the command pressing down on his shoulders. Kana stands with hands clasped, acknowledging the horror of the first time Riku had to cut someone down. It must have been hard. Mizuki pieces it together, realizing Riku wanted them to feel the weight of killing through his own scars. Riku's face is calm but serious in the center. Then he shifts to the students, apologizing for the force of the lesson. "Things are different from Japan," he warns them. "One wrong move and they could have died." Kana sits on the ground, legs spread wide, and points out the exposure with a sharp accusation. "Your panties are totally visible." Mizuki freezes, a blush burning across her face as the words hit her like a slap. The air turns thick with embarrassment, Mizuki trembling as the reality of the situation settles in. Then the threat cuts through the silence, sharp and dangerous. "Then go ahead and die!" Mizuki screams, rage overriding her shock. "Kana, wait!" someone shouts, trying to intervene, but the anger is already boiling over. Riku's voice cuts through the tension, low and thoughtful as he mutters that this might actually work. The students recoil, Mizuki and the others shouting in confusion about what exactly is going to work. Riku rubs his chin, eyes narrowing as he considers the plan. He turns to them with a grin, explaining that he was struggling to figure something out before leaving the country, but now he's finally got it. The moment hangs heavy with anticipation until the sound of shattering glass rings out. "Kana, calm down!" the student shouts, his grip tightening on Mizuki as he declares he's had enough of this. Mizuki struggles against his hold, rage boiling over from the earlier humiliation. The door bursts open, and Princess Epicalis demands to know what's happening, the maid trailing behind with a warning about Lord Epicaris. Before the maid can finish, Epicaris himself cuts in, accusing one of the otherworlders of blatantly staring at Mizuki's chest. Mizuki and Kana freeze, staring in disbelief at the accusation. Epicaris denies the accusation, shouting that nothing happened the way Mizuki claims. Mizuki demands to know what is wrong with him, pointing out that she saw him looking. Epicaris recoils, complaining that she keeps labeling him a pervert every single time. Princess Epicalis snaps at Mizuki, calling her a sassy little brat. Epicaris fires back immediately, telling Epicalis that one doesn't count because he couldn't help it, calling her a dirty old creep. Mizuki explodes at the insult, shouting that Epicalis is acting high and mighty while being powerless. The student shouts that he's out of here, panic cracking his voice. Princess Epicalis tells him she'll find her own way back to their world. As the boy runs, he thinks exile would make things easier for her, while the old man is better off gone anyway. Mizuki-chan alone is a good enough hostage, he thinks. Kana really sold it with that performance, he muses as he flees. Kana screams at him to just get lost and die in a ditch. The man sweats, confirming the pretense is holding. Princess Epicalis counters immediately, her gaze steady as she warns that the kingdom remains unstable and unsafe. She turns her attention back to the student, asking if he truly still intends to go out, when Lady Kana warned that a powerless person could die at any moment. The student roars back, refusing to stay put even if war breaks out and the castle itself becomes a target. Nearby, Kana snaps that she won't spend another second with the pervy old man, her anger boiling over while a bystander yells for her to apologize. Epicalis closes her eyes and accepts the choice, promising to respect the individual's decision. Riku watches her with a knowing smile, realizing she never intended to negotiate peace in the first place. He voices his appreciation, but the truth settles in. He's just used the chaos to create a valid excuse to leave the castle behind. A voice calls out to the princess from the group, but Riku stands ready, hands in his pockets, declaring the situation good. So, the question hangs in the air before Kana demands confirmation. That was the right choice, right? The students exhale a collective sigh of relief. The pervy old creep is leaving, they whisper, though one admits it hurts a little. Another chimes in that he does glance at boobs and butts sometimes. Riku rubs his temple, groaning that it's not every day you live this close to a bunch of high school girls. "Gotcha," snaps at him, not to admit that like it's normal. Gotcha. Leaps into the air, thrilled to finally step outside. She warns that if demons are involved, they'll need Riku there, even if they leave him behind. Riku hesitates, muttering a but, while a student worries if the others will be okay if they go alone. The group advises them to hold back on training for a while. Riku hands over a smartphone, telling them to contact him if anything happens. The student notes Riku upgraded it for him, while someone warns that if they get too strong too fast, the princess might jump into war. The students stand before a door, calling out for Riku as it creaks open. Riku turns around at the sound of knocking. Kana's eyes widen in surprise as a man in heavy armor steps into view. A smirk plays on her lips as she challenges him. "Coming back to lose at that board game again?" Plava stands his ground. He claims she's getting cocky just because she won once by chance. He insists he might lose to Riku, but he still hasn't lost to her. Then the mood shifts. Plava steps aside to reveal the maids behind him. He tells them he brought what they need for the journey. The maids hold out supplies, money, tools, healing potions. The student stands frozen. And this. Plavas adjusts the straps of his new armor, a satisfied smirk on his face as he notes the gear is actually pretty decent. Gotcha pops up beside him, thrilled, shouting that it looks awesome. Plavas turns his attention to the princess, muttering that she must be kind of a good guy. Epicalis admits she was the one told to pick it out, her voice softening as she hopes the equipment helps him survive, even a little. She quickly deflects, claiming she might just be being nosy, but Plavas is left confused by the sudden shift in her demeanor. Plavas leans in, his long hair falling over his eyes as he studies Riku with a sharp, searching gaze. "Riku," he murmurs, the suspicion creeping into his voice. "Could it be you're actually capable?" Riku throws his head back, a goofy, self-deprecating grin plastered on his face. "Come on! I'm just a powerless middle-aged dude, remember?" Plavas shifts the subject, his tone softening into something more practical. "Anyway," he says, "Yom left a message." Riku tilts his head, the question slipping out instinctively. "From the minister?" Plavas nods, his armor clinking softly as he turns to offer guidance. He said, "If you're traveling, stop by the Adventurers Guild. It's a whole different world out there." He gestures vaguely toward the horizon, explaining that the guild can explain things outside the castle and help find jobs. The advice lands heavy on Riku, a lifeline thrown into the unknown. Plavas presses a scroll into Riku's hands, the metal clinking softly against the wood. "And take this," he says, his voice steady. Riku catches it, asking what it is. Plavas explains it's a pass, something that should let Riku get through most gates, castles, or borders without trouble. Riku is surprised by the kindness, muttering that it's surprisingly kind of them. Riku hesitates, wondering aloud if the princess found him annoying enough to warrant this help. Plavas shrugs it off, admitting he doesn't know the princess's thoughts, but he was told to pass the message, so he did. Plavas calls him smart, then admits he was about to meddle again for no reason. Plavas bids him safe travels, but Riku immediately quips about not pooping in the wild until he's out of the city. Plavas yells at him to stop calling it that, and Riku just laughs it off with a groan of "Geez!" He pauses at the door, saying, "Wait a sec," before declaring they're supposed to be fighting and he doesn't need a send-off. Kana cuts him off, grabbing his arm to shove something into his hand and telling him to take this too. Riku pauses, a confused hum escaping him as he inspects the item. A school uniform ribbon stares back at him, and he wonders aloud if this belongs to Kana. Kana demands he make sure he comes back to return it, her voice sharp. She yells at his hesitation, and Riku realizes the weight of the gesture, shouting that he understands exactly what this is about and promising to do so. Kana stands firm, hands on her hips, insisting they all go back to Japan together and demanding a promise. Riku chuckles, activating a storage gate to tuck the bag away, while a nearby student gapes at the magic, vowing to learn it. Riku walks away from the castle, Gotcha tucked safely into his cloak. He calls out to the girl, promising to be back, while the students wave frantically from the gate, shouting that they hope he doesn't die. The old man grins, a sharp edge to his smile as he turns his face toward the horizon. He mutters that it's time to move, and the heavy iron gates groan open before him, the metals screeching against stone as he steps into the unknown. Riku stands in the open, the castle looming behind him. He breathes in the moment, declaring it's been a while since he traveled alone. The declaration hangs in the silence before a small voice cuts through it. "I am right here, you know." Gotcha pops out from the folds of his cloak. Riku jumps, his voice dropping to a hiss. "Hey, don't pop out like that. What if someone sees you?" "Jeez, you're so loud. We're finally outside," she retorts. "Just get back in already." Riku sighs, the freedom of the road already clashing with the need for discretion. The road calls. Riku sets off for the neighboring country, Eretria, with his first stop at the Adventurers Guild. He steps through the door with a quiet, "Huh?" as the atmosphere shifts instantly. A bearded man behind the counter freezes, eyes wide as he processes the destination. "You're heading to Eritrea?" he asks, voice tight. At a time like this? He leans forward, the weight of his authority pressing down. Even if the war hasn't started yet, he warns, people will start suspecting him the moment he speaks. He's the master of this guild, and he's been ordered to report Riku's movements to the castle. He points a finger at the old man. "You, the otherworlder." The guildmaster's gaze sharpens as he leans in, his tone dropping from warning to something more pragmatic. He admits Riku is honest, and he doesn't hate that. But he questions if the old man is intentionally trying to get reported. Riku smirks, unbothered, and the guildmaster sighs, realizing Riku has a travel permit. He explains that using the permit will trigger a report to the castle, but movement within the country and departure is free. Entry shouldn't be an issue right now. He points to a map, outlining the journey, 7 days by carriage to the border, then another 5 days to the capital. Riku asks about the distance, and the master confirms he guessed Riku already expected that. Riku cuts straight to logistics, demanding a horse. The guildmaster doesn't hesitate, launching into the grim history of the region. 50 years ago, a mysterious race suddenly appeared on an uninhabited island in the southern coastal regions. They brought troublesome armies with them, including lesser devils, and the master warns they are tough, highly intelligent, and possess powerful magic. Fortunately, they've managed to repel the threat for now, though the once peaceful world was thrown into chaos in an instant. The source is laid bare, the Demon King's island, blind smoke, where only the neighboring countries have avoided total destruction. Riku eyes the map, his expression hardening as he asks. The guildmaster confirms the grim reality. For now, they've only been repelling the threat. Riku absorbs the truth, the role of the hero settling over him. So that's where the hero comes in. He flashes a grateful smile, thanking the man for the help. The guildmaster waves it off, stating that providing information is part of the guild's duties. Before Riku steps out, a final warning echoes from the counter. The number of monsters has decreased lately, but there are still some outside the city. Stay alert. Riku walks away with his gear, the weight of the road settling on his shoulders. Outside the building, he taps into his magic. Riku seals the scroll away, the magic fading as the item vanishes into storage. Gotcha perches on his shoulder, asking what comes next, but Riku warns her to keep her face hidden. He confirms with the guildmaster that he's secured a tent and preserved food, and the man states the horse is next. Stepping out into the market, Riku muses that the street stalls look the same no matter what world you're in, and there's no sign that war is looming either. Yet, as he walks away, whispers follow him, wondering if it was wise to openly declare a trip to the neighboring country and noting that the guild will be reporting his movements to the castle. Riku realizes the truth behind the kindness he received. He admits to Gotcha that Plavas seemed to understand the situation too, that the advice to stop by the guild and the travel permit were all just to keep track of their movements. It wasn't out of kindness, just protocol. Gotcha snaps at him for being so sharp, admitting she almost stuck her nose where it didn't belong again. Riku brushes it off, saying he needed the information and something else to confirm, which makes Gotcha furious that he knew the truth but still went to the guild anyway. She yells at him to stop moving around under the cloak, but he just says that's for later. The old man turns his back on the conversation, looking. Riku halts, holding out the pouch. Hold on a second. He asks how much Plavas gave them. He counts the coins. We have 20 gold coins and 3 silver coins left. Gotcha panics. Buying a horse would wipe us out. Riku's mind races, and he's definitely trying to overcharge us. Still, since he recommended this one first, it's probably the most expensive at 20 gold coins. If we negotiate, we can probably get a better price. Riku steps forward. Excuse me? The memory cuts back to a younger boy named Ted, clutching the reins of a worn horse in a market square. He asks a passing man if he'd like to buy, telling him to stop telling it to self, but the merchant scoffs telling him, to the butcher like that. Telling him to the butcher, but the merchant cuts him off, telling him to stop making impossible demands and go to the butcher if he's so desperate. The merchant shoves him away, shouting that he needs to stop bothering his business and just give up, leaving the boy standing there with his useless horse as the market bustles around them. The memory hits Riku like a physical blow, flashing back to a boy named Ted, clutching the reins of a worn horse in a bustling market square. The merchant's scoff cuts through the noise, dismissing the child's desperate pleas for medicine money, leaving the boy to weigh with his useless steed as the town moves on. The bald merchant blinks up at Riku, confused by the transaction. "Huh? What about your horse?" he asks, voice cracking. "Got you," watches, her expression softening as she sees the old man's actions. "Ah, you always act tough," but the boy leads the white steed away while Riku watches from the distance. "You really have such a self-sacrificing nature." The boy runs through the gate with a breathless shout. "I'm home!" He slips into the stable, feeding the horse with gentle hands, the weight of hunger lifted for the first time. Ted tucks his mother into bed, her face pale in the dim light. Riku watches the memory unfold, realizing the woman is sick and malnourished. He feels the weight of the boy's sacrifice. Gotcha hovers behind him, calling him a busybody for caring about a stranger's past. Riku shuts her up instantly. In the memory, Ted steps inside with a basket, smiling as the hunger in his mother's eyes lifts. Riku calls out to the boy, who jumps in surprise at the sudden attention. The old man presses him, noting he was at the stable earlier, but no one would buy the horse. The boy stammers an agreement, and Riku asks what happened to his father. Standing beside the animal, Riku asks if the boy is trying to sell the horse. The boy explains that 2 months ago his father went to another town to sell vegetables from their backyard farm and hasn't come back. While waiting for him, his mother collapsed and they ran out of savings. Riku asks the boy's name, and Ted stammers out his answer. The old man doesn't waste time. He announces he'll buy the horse. Ted freezes, a radish clutched tight in his hands, eyes bulging in shock. He asks why anyone would pay for a worn-out beast. Riku doesn't answer with words. He produces a bag of coins, heavy enough to silence the question. The gold glitters in the light enough to buy a brand new horse and still have change left over. Ted gapes at the wealth. Riku turns his back, leaning against the stable door, and adds a final condition. He happens to like the horse, but more importantly, he'll check on the boy's money. Riku steps into the room, his presence silencing the air. He asks Ted what all the commotion is about. The boy stammers, asking who this stranger is. Ted turns to his mother, shouting that someone bought their horse for 20 gold coins. His mother whispers in disbelief. Riku approaches the bed, reaching out to her. She blinks in confusion. He asks permission. He places his hand on her forehead. A soft glow pulses. The pain vanishes in a single breath. The woman's eyes snap open, wide and unblinking as the sickness drains away. She sits up, trembling, and whispers that her body feels lighter. Ted shouts her name, panic and hope warring in his throat. Riku tells her to try standing up slowly, his voice steady against the rising emotion. She rises to her feet, legs shaking but holding, and Ted screams with joy as she stands fully upright. "Mom! You can stand!" Riku turns toward the door, cloak billowing, warning that magic won't fix starvation. He orders them to use the gold for real food, or the sickness will return. Riku brushes off their gratitude, insisting he is just a middle-aged man acting on a whim. Ted and his mother insist he looks like a distinguished adventurer, unable to find the words to thank him properly. Outside, Riku asks the horse's name, and Ted proudly calls him Big Brother. Riku asks about the town where the father went, promising to ask around if he passes through Michelle near the border with Eritrea. He reiterates that he is just an old man, not a hero. The mother pleads with him to check on a merchant named Thomas if he sees him, but Riku tells them not to sweat it. Riku leans in close, his eyes sharp, reminding the boy that this time he just got lucky. Ted stammers, eyes wide with sweat, promising he'll never trust an easy deal again. From the stable door, Ted and his mother wave frantically, shouting thanks and telling him to take good care of Harrier. Riku rides off on the white steed and disappears into the starry night, letting out a long sigh as the road stretches ahead. "You went and bought this old, frail horse. Now you're broke because of it." Gotcha's voice cuts through the night, sharp with disbelief as she perches on Riku's shoulder. Riku just grins, the wind whipping his cloak. "It's fine," he waves a hand dismissively. "That money wasn't going to last anyway. It was easy. Come, easy go. I'll just earn more somewhere else." The white steed Harrier trots forward into the starry night. Riku pats the horse's neck, his voice ringing out with genuine warmth. "Let's get along, old man, to old horse Harrier." Gotcha chirps in agreement from atop the horse's head. "Right? J-Ko, K-U." A girl stands in the starry night, her back turned to the road. R-I-Ko. She turns, cloak swirling, calling out his name with a desperate urgency. R-I-Ko. Her face fills the frame, hair sweeping down to hide her eyes, voice cracking with panic. "What's wrong? You look pale!" Riku gasps awake in the dead of night, sweat slicking his face as a nightmare claws at his throat. Gotcha's voice pierces the silence, sharp and urgent. "R-I-Ko!" She hovers close, her concern cutting through his panic. "Riku, are you okay? You were muttering Iris in your sleep." Her words hang heavy, a name he hasn't spoken aloud in years. He stands by the tent, the wind cooling his skin, the memory of the dream fading into a cold ache. "I've started dreaming about that world more often." He looks down at his hands, the weight of the silence pressing in. "Is it because I'm alone again?" The horse stands tethered nearby. Wind whips through the trees as Riku pats Harrier's neck, the old steed surprisingly lively despite his age. 3 days since they left town, halfway to the border. Gotcha hovers nearby, asking what he means, but Riku just grins. He insists Harrier still has some life in him. Gotcha's expression darkens as she recalls a warning about Reach disappearing after returning to her original world. The timing matches. Reach was looking for him with Cress and Tylus, but something feels off. The realization hits him. Riku leans forward, urging Harrier to run at full speed. He shouts for Reach not to get separated from the group. Gotcha hovers nearby, wings flapping frantically as Reach hovers in the air, startled. She cries out in confusion, asking what is happening. Behind them, 3 hooded riders on horseback thunder down the road, closing the distance with terrifying speed. The pursuers know the truth. They can't outrun the younger horses and will catch up soon. Reach demands the plan. Riku declares they head into the forest to avoid combat on horseback. He counts the enemies. 5, then 6 of them. Riku makes his move. He tells Reach to take care of Harrier and hands the reins over. Reach accepts the task, ready to protect the old horse while Riku leaves to face the danger on foot. Riku stands surrounded by hooded assassins in the forest clearing, his sword drawn against the odds. One assassin speaks first, voice muffled by the mask. "So you noticed the ambush?" Riku smirks, gesturing to their dark cloaks. "You sure you want to be dressed like that? It's practically announcing to the world that you're the guild master." The assassin's eyes widen beneath the hood. "But I never told Ted and the others where I was headed. The only ones who knew was the 3 high schoolers, Rish." The realization dawns on the attacker, panic creeping into their tone. "Not only that, you can actually set up an ambush? It's almost as..." Riku pauses the fight, his eyes narrowing as a sudden realization strikes. "Wait a second. Who did the guildmaster say they were reporting to?" The assassins hesitate, their masks hiding the flicker of panic. "You're sharp. Now that your client's identity has been exposed." The assassin steps forward, blade raised. "The real question is..." Riku's grin widens, dangerous and knowing. "But you're the one who's dying here." The words hang in the air, heavy with threat, before the assassin lunges. Riku moves first, a blur of motion that leaves the attacker stumbling backward, eyes wide with shock. A head explodes in a spray of crimson before the assassin even hits the dirt. Riku stands unmoving, a single laugh escaping his lips as he watches the kill. Behind him, the remaining assassins freeze, eyes widening in sheer panic. One stammers in disbelief, the other wondering how the old man closed the distance so fast. Riku turns his head, a cut bleeding down his cheek, and smiles with terrifying ease. "Who said anything about me dying?" Silence follows the slaughter. Riku stands over the fallen, his breath steady despite the violence just unleashed. The forest watches in stillness as the only sound is the wind rustling through the trees where the bodies lie. The fight is over, but the cost hangs heavy in the air. A stunned gasp echoes from the stunned survivors as the silence stretches. Riku stands over the headless body, his grin sharp. "Who said anything about dying?" he asks, the threat hanging heavy. But the adrenaline fades fast. His body begins to tremble violently, the sword slipping in his grip. He grits his teeth, sweat dripping down his face. Ah! Damn it! The realization hits. He's not invincible. No way! The realization crashes over the assassins as they stare at the bloodied sword dripping over their fallen comrades. He's armed, sure, but I heard he's just a powerless commoner. The sentence dies in their throats. A blade tip presses against an eye, blurring the world into a single point of terror. Wait, what? Riku sits casually amidst the carnage, sword resting in his lap, his voice cutting through the panic like steel. Powerless commoner, huh? Stop staring and start swinging. One assassin lies dead, a sword impaling his forehead while the last survivor freezes, the thought screaming in his mind. Riku stands alone in the clearing, 4 assassins closing in from all sides. He spreads his arms wide, a challenge hanging in the air. "Come on!" he calls out, his voice steady. "Only 4 of you left!" The assassins hiss in frustration, panic tightening their grip. "Damn it!" one shouts. "Surround him and take him out all at once." They lunge forward, blades raised. But Riku doesn't wait. He surges forward, sword flashing. An assassin freezes, eyes widening as the steel comes. "What the?" Blood flies as Riku's blade connects with an assassin, the enemy recoiling from the impact. Riku shouts, "Too slow, 3 left." The steel bites deep into flesh, a sensation he knows well. He presses the advantage, explaining that surrounding a fast opponent isn't a good tactic. There's also a speed difference that makes surrounding hard for you, huh? The assassins panic, realizing the gap between them. "What the hell are you? We're fighting to the death! This is life and death!" They scream, but the old man's grin remains. Riku swings his sword through the air, blood splashing as he strikes down an enemy, his face twisted into a manic grin. "Why the hell am I?" Smiling? He wonders, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He laughs, the sound wild and unhinged, as he shouts that the head went flying and there are only 2 left. But the moment passes, and the grin fades into shock, his eyes widening as the reality of what he's done crashes down. He killed someone, right after he started his journey. The scarred man stares back, his face a map of violence, the leader of a bandit gang. Steel flies and bodies shatter in a spray of crimson, the bandits falling before they can strike. It was the young man's first time fighting a real person, yet a regular guy stood no chance against a hero. He stands over the carnage, the silence heavy before his stomach heaves. "Ugh! Kag!" The assassin lunges, blade flashing, but Riku just grins, blood smeared across his cheeks. "Nice charge," he calls out, eyes gleaming with manic glee. Going for the throat-smart move. The attacker freezes, realization dawning too late. "Damn it!" he screams, but Riku is already on him, disarming the strike with a casual flick of his wrist. "What?" But the words die as Riku steps back, breathless but grinning, adrenaline screaming through his veins. "Come on, just 1 left!" he shouts, his voice echoing off the trees. "You're panicking so much! Your moves are all—" Riku's grin widens, eyes gleaming with a manic, unhinged energy as he reflects on the thrill of the kill. Killing the first man boosted his fame, but the act itself changed something inside him. Over time, the feeling of killing faded into numbness, until suddenly it started to feel fun. He remembers the next one he killed was a traitor secretly working with the Demon King's army, a fact that justified the violence in his mind. Now, fighting for his life, he stands over the carnage, the adrenaline screaming through his veins as he realizes the dark tree A masked rider on horseback gallops away, cursing as he realizes he must retreat and report the encounter. He glances back, eyes widening in shock as he spots the young man standing calmly in the clearing. The rider mutters that the boy can use magic too, disbelief shaking his voice. The young man, face smeared with dirt and blood, flashes a grin that cuts through the tension. He taunts the fleeing assassin, noting that running was the fastest thing the rider had done all day. But he cuts himself off, a dangerous glint in his eyes, hinting at something far worse waiting in the wings. The rider freezes, the realization hitting him. Blood drips from Riku's grin as he snaps his fingers, a stream of water erupting from his palm. The water bullet screams through the air, aimed straight at the fleeing rider. The assassin on horseback freezes, eyes bulging in sheer disbelief. "You," he whispers, the sentence dying on his lips. What the hell? The thought crashes through his mind as the impossible magic closes in. Hooves thunder against the ground, the rider desperate to put distance between himself and the monster in the clearing. The horse gallops away into the darkness, leaving the old man standing alone in the silence. The clearing falls silent, the only sound the heavy thud of bodies hitting the earth. Riku stands alone in the center of the carnage, sword planted in the dirt, surrounded by the fallen forms of the assassins. A horse grazes nearby, oblivious to the blood soaking the grass, while the forest watches in stillness. In the shadows of the trees, the old man looks out, his expression calm, but his eyes reflecting the violence he just unleashed. The fight is over, but the cost hangs heavy in the air. In a life before this, he had tried to forget it all. Riku stands alone, sheathing his blade with a sharp click. But now, it's coming back. That rush. The tension of kill or be killed, it's returning to him, sharper than ever. Riku stands amidst the carnage, blood smeared across his face, eyes wide with a manic, unhinged grin. "I've been yearning for it," he shouts, the thrill of the kill surging through his veins like a drug. "This feeling." The adrenaline screams in his ears, drowning out the silence of the forest. The memory cuts in, sharp and cold. An office worker slumps over a computer screen, the glow of the monitor illuminating a hollow face. "I thought." But the truth is, he whispers to the dark room, "It's already broken." The realization settles heavy in his chest, the weight of a life lived in a lie. "I've been living trying to deceive myself." The question hangs in the air. "Yes." Finally got a connection shifting from the manic grin, she exclaims, relief washing over her voice. "Riku, are you okay?" The question hangs in the air, sharp with worry. Riku holds the device, his expression shifting from the manic grin of the forest to something more grounded, though still weary. "It's only been 4 days," he says, his tone light, trying to brush off the concern. "Don't tell me you're already missing me, Kana," he teases, a familiar charm returning to his voice. "No, that's not it. I was worried about Futa and Mizu, that's all. See, I'm totally fine," he stammers, the denial coming too quickly. He lingers. The connection ends. "It's fine if it's just me," hangs in the air. Later, "Riku, I'll call again, okay? You better call me too." "Gotcha," chirps. "Yeah, talk soon." Then the silence crashes down, falling apart. Riku stands there, eyes shadowed, face streaked with dirt and blood. Gotcha hovers close. "Magic mirrors, huh? So damn convenient." "Riku?" Kana's voice cracks with worry, her face close and clear. The question lands before the truth can be hidden. "Are you crying?" Riku stands motionless in the clearing, head bowed low over the device in his hands. Blood and dirt streak his face, but it's the tears he's trying to hide that betray him. Gotcha hovers nearby, wings still, watching the old man crumble in the shadows of the trees. Riku rides out of the forest with a string of captured horses, the loot gleaming in the sunlight. "Looks like we got ourselves a whole lot of horses," he exclaims, the weight of the day's work settling into satisfaction. "We sell these off. We've got enough cash to last us a while." The road stretches ahead, wide and open, promising a fresh start. But the joy is short-lived. Riku pats Harrier's neck, his smile turning fierce. "Hell yeah! Way to go, Harrier!" he shouts, the bond between man and beast clear and unbreakable. "No way! We've been together all week," he declares, his voice cutting through the wind. "He's my partner now." Gotcha hovers close, her small form perched on Riku's. Riku lets out a breath he didn't know he was holding. the tension of the ambush finally fading into the quiet road. Maybe this world's actually pretty safe when you're just traveling, he muses, the relief evident in his voice, and no more pursuers since back then either. He glances back at the empty forest behind them. Now that I think about it, we haven't run into any monsters or demons at all. The journey feels lighter now. Suddenly, a girl named Mizu pops up from the side of the road, arms outstretched. "Oh!" she exclaims, spotting them. Ahead, the road winds toward a settlement nestled in the mountains. "That must be Michelle Town, Riku. That's where Ted's dad is supposed to be, right?" Mizu points toward the settlement, her excitement bubbling over. Futa nods immediately. "Yeah!" Riku sits atop Harrier, reins in hand, adding his own plan to the mix. "Gotta ask around about him too." The town of Michelle comes into view, rows of timber-framed houses lining the street. Riku rides through the outskirts, the captured horses trailing behind him. A townsman waves from the gate, gratitude bright on his face. "Thanks a bunch," he calls out as Riku guides his horse forward, leaving the market deal behind. Riku sets the next target, find Ted's dad. He wonders why anyone would take a job near the border with war brewing. They count the spoils, 90 gold coins. That's roughly 90,000 yen. They won't be hurting for cash for a while. Riku speculates on the man's motives. Maybe he knew food would be scarce from the war, or only a handful of people knew it was about to start. Even the castle town was super chill. They walk into the settlement. Riku approaches a local vendor. "The veggie seller from the capital?" "Yeah, I know him. Seriously? When'd you last see him?" The name hangs in the air. "Tom?" The vendor pauses, holding a large jar, thinking hard. Riku cuts through the silence, asking the price for the vase. 1 silver coin. The vendor suddenly remembers something, claiming he hasn't seen the man in 2 months. Riku presses for details, but the vendor hesitates. Riku gets frustrated, sweating as he realizes he's being stonewalled. The vendor shouts to throw in another vase, trying to close the deal instead of giving the truth. Futa throws her head back, laughter ringing out loud and bright. Mizu snaps at her to shut up, eyes wide as she stares at the horse lumbering along, its back groaning under the weight of so many pots. Nearby, Gotcha hovers beside Riku, shaking her head at the memory of the encounter. That old geezer was way sharper than he looked, she notes, and Riku admits they didn't get much out of him either. Mizu steps in to fill the silence, confirming that the vase-piddling old man did say something useful after all. Tom's came from the capital 2 months ago, setting up his usual street stand in the town. A cane-wielding man with a monocle swept through the market, demanding food supplies at crazy prices. Tom's, the vendor, remembered the stranger approaching him and others, but then things took a sharp turn. They followed him to a handoff, then silence. No one knows where he went after that. Riku and Gotcha grimaced at the 2-month-old cold trail, realizing no one else knew where they were headed either. Futa and Mizu bolted away, leaving Asari to Ted hanging in the air. Riku rides Harrier with Gotcha, buzzing overhead, the road stretching out before them as they finally announce their destination. They're heading for the border, and Eritoria is just ahead. The old man leads the horse, complaining that even empty, the vases are heavy for the beast, but Gotcha promises to stash them with storage magic once she's done. Futa snaps at him for being a sore loser, asking if he really got a use for those vases, and Riku insists he does. The road continues into the unknown, the journey stretching out under the open sky. Riku tightens his grip on the reins, the weight of the vases forgotten against the anticipation of what lies ahead at the border. The silence of the path promises nothing but danger, yet the old man rides on. A monstrous rabbit hurls a spiraling water bullet, claws tearing the air as the impact shakes the ground. Just past the border, the silence breaks. Something is clearly wrong. Back in the kingdom of Localis, Riku barely encountered any monsters, but the moment he entered the kingdom of Eritoria, it's been day after day of this. He grins through the sweat, eyes sharp, ready for the fight. "What the hell is going on?" Gotcha shrieks, hovering in the air above the road. Riku plants his boots in the dirt, sword drawn and ready, a curse tearing from his throat as the reality of the situation hits him. Harrier stands ready behind him, reins taut. A swarm of ram-headed beasts charges down the path, horns lowered, cutting off any escape. The old man braces himself, eyes locked on the incoming swarm, ready to carve a path through them. A few days earlier, the border guards barely spared a glance. A guard demands to know if he was selling pots in Eritrea, then simply wishes him luck as a merchant. Riku stares back, wondering if that was truly all it took. He realizes he didn't even need a pass to cross. The ease of it gnaws at him. He questions aloud if they should really be letting people cross the border this easily during wartime. The guard stammers a confused reply. A helmeted guard leans in with a casual smirk, dismissing the looming conflict as nothing more than a trade dispute over food and timber. He shakes his head, certain it won't escalate into a real war, while his comrade nearby echoes the sentiment about soldiers supposedly on the brink of battle. Riku listens, the casual chatter hitting him like a cold splash of water as he realizes only a handful of people actually know Locali's plans to invade. The locals are chatting like it's nothing, keeping Eritoria's war preparations under wraps. If that's the case, the reason someone came after him suddenly makes sense. At the gate, the hooded guard eyes the wares with skepticism, asking if those pots are actually going to sell. His helmeted comrade snaps at him to mind his own business, though a confused murmur follows. Riku, standing beside Harrier with the horse shifting restlessly, admits he doesn't think they'll sell either anyway, he just wants to get rid of them. He drives his boot down hard, the impact sharp and decisive, sealing his intent. "I miss how smooth things were back then," Riku shouts, swinging his sword through the chaos. He complains about the sheer number of monsters swarming him today. Birds and boars fall in a spray of feathers and blood as his blade cleaves through them. Then he stops dead, sword held low, mouth opening in a confused stutter. Riku muses aloud that locales might be pouring more effort into exterminating monsters than this country, and Gotcha agrees the sudden rise feels unnatural. A sudden exclamation cuts through the thought, and then the road ahead clears to reveal the destination. The city walls rise in the distance, and someone shouts that they can finally see them. Riku and Gotcha crouch low in the tall grass, breath held tight as they spot a caravan rolling down the road. A voice hisses, a warning to hide, and Riku mutters that it's time to start living and hiding again. They watch from the cover of the foliage as a large wagon rumbles past, pulled by horses. Two figures in full plate armor stand guard nearby, their presence unmistakable. Riku stares, his eyes narrowing as he recognizes the crest on their backs. The Eritoria Knights. The Eritoria Knights inspect the wagon, their armor gleaming as they examine the carcass of a massive beast slung across the wood. One knight remarks that the local hunters are finally doing their job, while his companion confirms it's just monster hunting, the casual tone masking the danger. Hidden in the tall grass, Riku watches them, but his eyes snap to something else. A thick, scaled tail coiling through the foliage nearby. A giant snake, far too large to be ignored, lies just feet away from the guards. They haven't noticed it at all, and Riku's eyes widen as a single question forms. Riku breaks the silence with a shout, warning the knights that a monster is nearby. The Eritoria guards freeze, exchanging confused glances as they try to identify the stranger, yelling from the distance. Riku sprints down the slope, cursing the situation as he closes the gap, desperate to get their attention before the snake strikes. The Eritoria knights freeze, armor clinking as the female guard pants from the sudden exertion, her eyes wide with shock. Beside her, the male knight stands ready, sword drawn and tense. Then the grass parts to reveal the beast, a massive snake coiled in the dirt, its scales gleaming under the sun, far too large to be ignored. Confusion ripples through the ranks as they realize the danger. "A snake appeared," one shouts. "What's going on?" Another cries out, checking for injuries. The female knight turns to the cloaked figure sprinting down the slope, her voice soft with concern. "Are you all right?" she asks the stranger. But the male knight is already... The knight in steel armor steps forward, breathless but relieved, asking if the magic that saved them from a blind spot came from the stranger. Beside him, a girl knight beams with excitement, declaring the magic amazing and assuming the old man is a renowned mage before introducing herself as Freya. Riku brushes off the praise with a humble smile, insisting he's just an old guy, but Freya clarifies that they belong to the Eratoria Kingdom's Night Corps. She gapes at the fallen snake, impressed that such a massive beast was defeated so easily, while Riku stands confused by the sudden attention. Riku locks eyes with the armored captain and calls him out by name. Captain Nimros. Freya leans in to explain the connection, noting that Nimros serves in the Elatria Night Corps, a detail that seems to ripple through the group. Riku shakes the captain's hand with a casual shrug, dismissing the heroics as no big deal, while Nimros insists the knights' lives were saved thanks to him. The moment of gratitude breaks as the captain's voice cuts through, ordering Freya to load the beast and move out immediately. Freya snaps a sharp, "Yes, sir," as the warning echoes that dawdling now could mean an attack. The knight captain steps forward, offering a formal thanks, but Riku can only manage a hesitant sound in response. Nimros glances at the female knight beside him, marveling at how she's still standing despite her small frame, before turning back to the old man. Riku introduces himself, and Nimros immediately invites him to the castle. Nearby guards whisper, recognizing him as a friend of Bravas and confirming he's from Localis. Riku confirms the origin, and when asked if they know him, the guards exchange glances before Nimros cuts through the chatter. He demands an audience with the king of Eratoria, his face hardening as he reveals. Nimros barks a command for his men to stand down, declaring the old man a benefactor. Riku appraises the steel-clad soldiers and remarks on their training. The guard beside him clarifies the situation to the captain. A summoned otherworlder from the princess of Locaris, with business for their king. They can't be too careful. Riku leans into the captain, admitting the princess is actually hunting him and his companions are under house arrest. Nimros grips his arm, noting they both want information. Riku presses the advantage, stating that's why he requests an audience with the king. The city rises ahead, a tall tower bearing a crest standing watch over the gates. Nimros walks beside him, remarking that the place is quiet compared to Locaris. Riku scans the empty streets and the parked wagons, noting the economic toll of the halted trade. He turns to the captain, asking if he really isn't going to restrain him. Nimros shakes his head, reminding him that he already said it. Plus, the old man saved their lives. Riku sizes up the knight captain, noting that his skill isn't limited to magic, but extends to the sword as well. He claims he can tell by the way Nimros moves. Nimros acknowledges the observation, realizing that's why the guards had lowered their weapons earlier. He admits that restraining Riku would have been a mistake. If the old man resisted, the damage would have been far worse than dealing with monsters. Nimros warns him not to cause any trouble, but Riku simply tells him that's up to him. The captain's expression softens as he thinks Riku doesn't seem like a bad guy and is sharp, making sense that he's Bravas' friend. The guard Reach stands frozen, eyes wide with shock as he takes in the old man standing beside him. Freya snaps back, flustered and defensive, shouting that it wouldn't happen, but Riku just grins, leaning in close to tease her about falling for him already. Riku speaks calmly next, admitting that even though he's another worlder, he doesn't look any different at all. He continues, noting he's heard rumors about the summoning ritual, but the reality is he appears unchanged. Nimros steps forward, his expression tight with worry, asking if the king will believe them if Riku looks exactly the same as a local. Riku pauses, considering the captain's concern before deciding to prove his point. Rish bursts from the cloak, arms thrown wide in triumph as the knights freeze in stunned silence. Nimros points out the obvious, but Freya's composure cracks instantly into obsession. She scoops the tiny dragon up, declaring her absolutely adorable before crushing her in a hug. Freya shrieks over the tiny dragon girl, but Riku introduces her simply as Rish. Nimros wonders if such creatures exist here, suggesting the king might finally believe their story. Riku admits Rish isn't proof of another world, yet Freya squeals in delight, ignoring the politics entirely. Boots strike the stone pavement, signaling the end of hesitation as Riku steps forward. The castle looms ahead, a massive wall of stone and secrets waiting to be breached. Nimros wrestles with conflicting accounts, wondering which side is telling the truth. The argument stalls, leaving the answer suspended in uncertainty. Zen stares with wide eyes, whispering the start of a realization that they came from another world. Riku stands calm, introducing himself simply as he faces the monarch. Zen shifts his gaze to the tiny dragon hovering nearby, admitting he forgot his manners. The king introduces his wife, Madli, and their daughters to the man kneeling before him. Riku rises to his feet, facing the monarch with earnest intent as he asks for information. Zen's expression hardens, his beard shadowing a gaze full of suspicion about whether he is friend or foe. Riku narrows his eyes, a dangerous smile cutting across his face as the air grows thick with tension. He whispers that he might be their enemy. The threat hangs in the air like a blade as Zanes and the royal women freeze in shared shock. Riku leans in close to Madli, his grin sharpening into something predatory as he whispers poison directly into her ear. He suggests her adorable daughters might just lose their heads and bodies in two. Madli recoils, hand flying to her mouth in horror, while King Zenz leans forward, eyes wide. Nimros draws his blade, shouting for Riku to step away from the princess immediately. Riku doesn't flinch, just flashes a smug grin before patting the girl on the head and apologizing with a casual, "My bad." The knight immediately drops to his knees, bowing deeply to the princess to apologize for the outburst. Nimros wipes a bead of sweat from his brow, the grim assessment settling in his gut. From what he can tell, Riku could probably overpower every single knight in this room by himself. Riku stands apart, silent and still, while the royal guards and the king alike feel the cold weight of that assessment land. King Zenz sits stunned, the weight of the assessment pressing down on him as the silence stretches. Nimros acknowledges the other heroes are still rookies, but Riku counters that 3 more people will reach his level someday. Zenz finally breaks the tension with a grim realization, admitting that this is the terrifying power of otherworlders. King Zenz roars from the throne, the stalemate shattering in a single breath. He stares down the old man, acknowledging the impossible truth of his presence. He extends the offer, declaring the kingdom of Eritoria will welcome them as guests. King Zenz leans forward from his throne, his voice cutting through the tension as he asks if Lady Epicalis summoned them to fight the demon lord. Riku stands calm, his sharp "So?" hanging in the air. The king continues, recounting Epicalis's words that she asked for help against the neighboring country under the demon lord's control. It all started 5 years ago when Locatus demanded they triple their food supplies just to keep trading timber like before. They declined, and Locatus slashed exports by half. Their national strength just keeps crumbling as more monsters and demon raids strike. The general and Nimros confirm the negotiations have stalled with no sign of compromise. The princess's words don't sound like a lie, and Nimros realizes the deserted streets on Eritoria's side mean Locaris is truly behind this. The realization hits hard, as Nimros understands the envoy probably got taken out on the way. In the corner, the princesses whisper, wondering if Locaris is being threatened by the demon lord instead. But Nimros cuts in, hard to say. If anyone was being threatened, Epicalis didn't look like it. She seemed all too eager for war. King Zenz stares ahead, grim resolve setting in. Night falls over the spires, the castle standing silent under the stars as the meeting finally winds down. The voice offers a reprieve, the tension easing just enough to suggest hospitality. But the reprieve is only a pause. The demand for a decision cuts through the politeness, hanging in the hallway. The tall knight stands firm, declaring his choice without hesitation. For now, I'm leaning toward this side. He glances back at the castle, adding, Eritoria just seems more reasonable. He shakes his head, pondering the implications. Either they're crazy or they're just that peaceful. The maid gestures down the hall, pointing out the room they'll be staying in for now. Freya mutters under her breath that he's a weirdo, though Riku retorts that, of course they are. The guards warn that they're still under surveillance, though Nimros promises they'll get help with anything needed. The other hero leans back, grinning with a scarf around her neck, unable to hide her envy. Man, but still, the way you moved in the throne room. You're crazy good at both magic and swordplay. Riku tries to interject, but the compliment hangs in the air. The guards argue in the hallway. Riku slams Ed against the wall, pinning her there with a grip that leaves no room for argument. The silence speaks for itself. Panic flares in Riku's eyes as he forces a spell through his trembling hand. Sealing spell. Now you can't even scream. Riku's voice is low, dark amusement curling his lips. You've only got yourself to blame for letting your guard down. Ed tries to protest, a frustrated TCH escaping her lips before the silence swallows her whole. Ed gasps, hand flying to her mouth in shock as the spell's effect, or lack thereof, hits her. Riku shrugs it off, raising a hand with a casual, "Sometimes things like that happen." Ed stares at him, wide-eyed and flustered, warning him to be more careful. Ed stands frozen, stuttering in shock before the blush burns across her face. She admits she thought Riku was falling head over heels for her charms, the realization hitting her hard. Embarrassed, she kicks Gotcha out of the room, shouting, "Get lost, bits!" before turning her glare on Riku. Ed's realization lands like a slap. She thought Riku was falling for her charms, but he was just bluffing about the spell. Nimros yells for peace as Ed storms off, the tension shifting from awkwardness to the looming threat of war. Freya sits alone in the room, staring at the ornate curtains and the weapons rack. Ed stumbles back, eyes wide as a deafening crash shakes the air. Nimros reaches out, concern flashing across his face while Gotcha hovers nearby. "What the?" Nimros mutters, his voice tight with confusion. Ed stands frozen, cheeks burning, managing only a stuttered, "So! They're here!" The blonde maid gasps, her eyes wide with panic. "It's them!" The bearded guard beside her freezes, shock rippling through him. "Them?" A deafening crash shatters the silence as a massive door bursts open. From the shadows, an elf with pointed ears grins wickedly. "The demons are attacking!" The warning tears through the night, confirming the breach was no mistake. High above the ramparts, a horned demoness floats with manic glee, her leathery wings spread wide against the starry sky. Smaller bat-like creatures swarm around her like a deadly flock. The night swallows the horizon, and the threat looms large. Demonkin materialize out of nowhere. But Riku seems to have something up his sleeve. A heavy thud shakes the room as the alarm erupts. It's a demonkin raid. The guards scream the warning, panic spiking in the air. Orders fly through the chaos. Riku steps forward into the chaos, declaring he's counting himself in on the fight. Freya gasps, realizing he intends to join the battle and tries to stop him. She pleads that he needs to clear it with the captain first, grabbing his arm and shouting that she told him to wait. "Arj, fine, do whatever you want." Freya throws her arms wide, armor clinking with her agitation. "I'll lead the way," she shouts, stepping forward. Riku watches from the shadows, hood pulled low. He turns, walking away from the light. "Seriously," he mutters to himself. Torches flicker along the stone walls, the light dancing over the pounding of boots on the stairs. Freya sprints ahead, armor clinking, eyes wide with the urgency of the chase. Riku trails behind, hood pulled low, Gotcha hovering silently in his wake. A grim rule of thumb settles in his mind. Freya keeps her eyes on the cloaked figure ahead, armor clinking softly as she follows. Riku leads the way, Gotcha perched on his shoulder like a silent sentinel. His pace is steady, unhurried even as danger looms. He pauses in the dim light, his eyes narrowing behind the cloth. Two colossal demonkin crash through the castle defenses, their cracked skin gleaming under the torchlight. One roars, a massive whip-like tail lashing behind her, while her companion swings a club the size of a tree trunk. A massive fist descends from the sky, threatening to crush everything below. A storm of arrows tears through the twilight sky, streaking toward the castle walls as winged horrors dive from the darkness. On the ramparts, archers and robed mages pour fire into the breach, their silhouettes stark against the moonlight. The ground trembles as the first wave crashes against the line. A massive, scaly demonkin looms overhead, its face twisted in a grimace as it surveys the castle defenses. Riku watches from the shadows, hood pulled low, Gotcha peering over the fabric, a big, scaly brute type. He assesses the threat with cold detachment. Riku spots the humanoid flyer, the bat-winged demoness with the elegant tail and claws. The boss, no doubt. Freya questions the logic from above, asking if demonkin from his world are fundamentally the same, wondering if that doesn't sound weird. Riku doesn't hesitate. Guess not. King Zen's roars into the night, his bow drawn tight as he demands to know how many times he must spell out the orders for demon consort Akira's. High above the ramparts, the bat-winged demoness hovers in silence, her wings spread against the starry sky. On the ground, a voice snaps Freya's attention. "Just swear fealty to us," the demoness purrs, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "I could grant you such power, you know." The king roars back, bow drawn tight, fury in his eyes. "I'm sick to death of hearing that offer. As if I'd ever hand over my precious daughters to your demon king for anything. Flyers are always a damn nuisance. The massive knight barks, club raised high against the sky. He can't ground 'em, can't fight 'em. They just pick you apart from above." Near the shadows, a small voice chimes in. "Yeah, Riku, you definitely had your struggles with them back then." A spiky, one-eyed demonkin screams as it takes a heavy blow. Freya drives her weapon through the air, catching the flyer mid-flight. She smiles, noting she's handling herself well. Riku, hooded and masked, agrees. The knights can handle the grunts. Which means, the real headache is her, isn't it? Gotcha hovers in the shadows, wings buzzing with impatience. "Not jumping in?" she asks. Riku stands still, hood pulled low, his voice muffled by the cloth. "Not yet." The battle rages on. A massive demonkin swings a club, roaring into the night. Let's face it, I'm an anomaly here. Blades sink into the fallen demonkin, and the beast's dying roar is drowned out by the knight's shouts of triumph. "That's one down! We got one!" they cry, their voices ringing through the courtyard. But the victory is fleeting. The bat-winged demoness hovers in the air, her silhouette sharp against the night. Akira sneers down at the assembled knights, her voice dripping with mockery. "You think you can possibly take Eritoria Castle with a pathetic force like this?" She throws her head back, laughing at their bravado. "Oh, honestly, men are just so predictable." Akira hovers above the battlements, her amusement curdling into something sharper. Perhaps it's time for a little reality check. Her hand snaps forward, claws extending like steel hooks. She drops from the sky, a dark silhouette against the moonlight, diving straight for the knights huddled on the wall. Akira hovers above the battlements, claws snapping forward as she unleashes a torrent of fire. "Behind the flare!" Magic tears through the night, streaking down toward the defenders. The knights scramble, shields useless against the incoming storm. "No!" King Zen's bellows, his face contorted in sheer disbelief. The firestorm crashes down, swallowing the battlements in a roar of heat and light. Knights scramble, shields raised against the inferno, but the flames tear through their defenses like paper. King Zen's freezes, his eyes widening in shock as the heat washes over him, his hand instinctively rising to his helmet. King Zen stands amidst the smoking ruins of the battlements, his armor scorched, but his body untouched. He looks around in disbelief, the shock rippling through his voice. "Whoa! Whoa! Whoa! How am I the only one unharmed?" Akira hovers above the chaos, her wings spread against the night sky, her expression shifting from amusement to genuine curiosity. Akira leans in, her smile sharp enough to cut glass as she delivers her ultimatum. "Now then, my oh-so-stubborn king, losing your men wasn't enough. Perhaps losing both your arms will make you a tad more cooperative." King Zines freezes, the horror of the realization hitting him like a physical blow. A claw snaps forward with lethal speed. Right? The strike lands true, and King Zines screams. Akira stands over the fallen king, her smile promising pain. "Whoopsie, my bad," she chirps. "Oh, that was your leg, wasn't it? Silly me." Riku strains against the barrier, teeth gritted. "Tah! Can't push it any." Gotcha hovers near the breach, wings fluttering in panic. A knight lies broken on the stone, blood pooling beneath him as Akira's looms over him. A sharp, desperate voice cuts through the horror. "R.E. I did it!" the armored knight gasps. Akira's freezes, shock rippling through her posture. Akira's roars, voice tearing through the night. "Who dares scar my flesh?" Her clawed fist crashes into Freya, sending the knight reeling. Dust settles on the battlefield. The knight holds its breath. The battle ends for now, leaving the heroes to wonder what comes next. The name Fairy's Breath echoes in the air as Riku grips the armored knight's arm, metal grinding under his strength. Knights gasp in unison as Gotcha hovers overhead. Even though the arm was completely crushed, Riku stands calm amidst the awe. Night watches over the silent battlements as Riku pauses, thoughts drifting back to why he was brought here. "I was summoned by the king, wasn't I?" King Zines and the gathered knights stand tall on the dais, their voices heavy with gratitude. They offer thanks to the man who saved them. Riku waves it off with a casual smile. King Zens exhales the tension, calling it a miracle. No one died. Nimros shivers, admitting the mere idea of Riku arriving a day later gives him chills. Nimros muses. He saw some of them during the fight earlier, noting their feelings are mixed. He worries. Some probably think he stole their glory rather than feel grateful. "Exactly. From what I saw in the recent battle," Weiler says, eyes still wide. "With you on our side, we can defeat her." The knight's jaw drops, the word WHHA tearing from his throat as the refusal lands like a physical blow. He stares at the old man, disbelief warring with memory. Riku places a hand over his chest, stating he doesn't belong to this world. Nimros presses him, asking what happens if another threat as strong as the demoness appears next time. Riku presses King Zanes for a benefit, asking what he gets out of defeating the demoness. A knight named Weiler explodes in anger, shouting that Riku has no right to speak to the king that way. "Your Majesty!" Weiler cries out, his voice cracking with panic. King Zine silences the room with a simple admission. "Riku Dono is correct." King Zines rubs his chin, the silence of the hall pressing against his heavy armor. "But a benefit, huh? Now, what should I do?" The knight steps forward, his offer cutting through the silence. "If you agree to help, all of Eritoria will do everything we can to find a way for you to return home." Riku closes his eyes, a satisfied smirk curling his lips as the offer lands perfectly. "Well," he murmurs before opening his gaze, sharp and decisive. "That sounds fair enough." Freya leans in, her voice cutting through the tension as she calls out Riku's hypocrisy. She points out that he preaches about solving things himself or asking what's in it for him. King Zens lays out the first requisition, with a sharp, commanding tone, demanding enough scrap metal for 2 swords, several 5-meter lengths of strong rope. Then, with a sudden shift, Riku interrupts. "Huh?" The word hangs in the air, a crack in the solemnity. "Wait just a minute." A knight's voice spikes, sharp with panic. "We're talking about countermeasures against demons, and you want us to start a war between humans?" Riku points a finger forward, a sharp grin splitting his face as he declares they are starting a war. The castle spires loom silently as the declaration hangs. A magical circle glows on the floor, replacing the flush of water. The door slides open with a sharp click. The young man stands there, hands clasped, eyes shining with relief. Mizuki screams that she can't take it anymore, her voice cracking as she complains about being told to be his woman every time training ends. The spiky-haired captain grumbles that the damn resonant won't stop bugging him. Futa-kun gets grilled about the royal court magician, Luvan, and whether she's hitting on him. He admits she's after Riku too, though the others debate if she's just lightening the mood. Like presses the issue, eyes bright with restless energy, demanding they've grown strong enough to at least step outside and explore the city. Futa-kun nods instantly. A simple, good idea, slipping out. Epicalus slams her authority down at the head of the dining table, cutting off their request with a sharp, "No way!" Like and Mizuki argue back immediately, insisting they've grown stronger. Epicalus voices the fear that haunts her, asking what happens if news of the heroes leaks and the demons attack all at once. A shadow demon looms in the darkness, its single eye cold and unblinking. Futa sits at the table, his mind racing through the inconsistencies of their captivity. Something doesn't sit right. They are supposed to be suffering food shortages, yet they are fed like royalty. Epicalus presses a hand to her left arm, claiming she twisted it falling last night. She mutters, "It's worse than expected," then excuses herself from the table. Futa sits at the table, the weight of Epicalus's sudden departure pressing down on him. He realizes that Riku's departure from the castle wasn't just a whim, it was a necessity born of the castle's isolation. The armored knights stand in a tense huddle, their faces grim as they voice a desperate hope. They'll just have to pray that war doesn't break out before Riku returns. The silence of the night fills the void left by the battle. The heroes wait in the quiet. Futa grips his phone tight, eyes wide with dread as he asks if war is about to begin. On the other end, Mizuki and Natsuna confirm the grim assessment, identifying Locaris as the likely culprit. Futa shouts into the phone, warning someone not to say it so easily. On the other end, Riku asks if the princess hurt her arm. Futa presses for details, asking if they've noticed any changes. A man bursts into the room shouting that Freya is coming in, but Futa and Mizuki on the other end of the line only hear a girl's voice. Riku, still on the phone, complains about the casual setup. A worker stands beside Like, basket in hand, announcing that the materials from yesterday are ready, scrap iron and all. Like looks bewildered, asking what is going on, seriously. A massive iron hook glints in the air, forged from twisted wire. Like gasps in awe, staring at the transformation as the rope snaps into a weapon. Freya hangs bound in rope while a small dragon hovers above, and Like leans in with a smirk to ask if tying her up like that is kinda kinky. She suggests they just use rope alone. "Yeah," the voice confirms, a quiet affirmation hanging in the air before the truth spills out. "Just like I said yesterday in the audience chamber." The words land with finality. King Zenes leans forward on his throne, asking if defeating the demons first means they won't have to deal with both threats at once. The knight beside him nods, the relief palpable in his stance. The armored knight lunges forward, shouting, "What? You bastard!" as his comrade struggles to hold him back. He demands to know if they are trying to take the intel back. Riku stops, a dark thought striking him. Could it be? The knight beside him recoils, sweat beading on his forehead as he shouts the accusation. "You're trying to become the villain?" "Kill Epicalus." The command drops like a hammer, the weight of it crushing the room. King Zen stares in horror, his knights frozen in shock as the reality of the order settles over them. A flashback cuts through the present, transporting back to a younger Riku and his companions in Japan. He declares he will try to persuade her face to face. The castle looms silent, a sprawling fortress of stone and spires. Riku thinks so carefree. "Well, I want to send them home." 10 days later, the moment arrives. The castle gates are open, the goodbye formal and brief. The knight confirms, "We've said our goodbyes," his voice steady as the backpack floats into the air. Gotcha zips into the air, wings buzzing with impatience. Nimros steps forward with a confident grin, cape flowing behind him. "I've decided to come along too," he declares, announcing his presence to the group. Riku turns back, skeptical. Nimros senses the weight of unseen eyes but knows nothing can halt him. Freya stays close, and he notes she won't weaken their forces. Rish chirps that they'll be together forever, and Nimros wonders if Riku is just going with the vibe. Nimros's sword catches the light, not standard Elatria gear, but the one he's most used to. Though he's grateful for the help, he can't help but complain that Riku broke the one he used to love. He scolds Riku for using a one-handed sword with both hands recklessly. Nimros apologizes, admitting he feels bad about it too. He reflects on misjudging the weapon's durability, a mistake he'd never have made back then. Riku adjusts his grip on the blade, a low hum vibrating through the air as he declares he'll tweak the design a bit. Nimros steps forward, offering the weapon with a sharp, "Here!" The magic settles, and Nimros clutches the hilt, a flush rising to his cheeks as he whispers that it feels like a gift from a guy, his heart racing. He stares closer, eyes widening as the reality hits him. What is this? He turns to leave, muttering about what kind of dangerous gift this is, but stops dead. Nimros sprints back, shouting for them to wait. Riku pauses, looking back over his shoulder, and agrees to hold on. Nimros shouts from atop his horse, eager to move out. Riku nods, agreeing they should head back to Locaris. Gotcha buzzes overhead, wings humming with excitement as the group prepares to leave the castle. Like's gaze falls on the large jars strapped to the horses and frowns, asking what the filth is about. Nimros grins, explaining the pots are a disguise to make them look like merchants and adventurer escorts. He's ready to blend in, even if it means carrying the weight of the journey. The envoy in the ruffled collar throws his head back, voice cracking with indignation as he declares they cannot accept Locaris' unjust demands. He unfurls a scroll and announces that the kingdom of Elatria hereby declares war against the nation of Locaris. The proclamation shatters the quiet of the throne room like a physical blow. Princess Epicalis stares forward, her eyes wide and unblinking as the declaration hits her. Behind her, an older nobleman looks on with a grimace, the tension in the room thick enough to choke on. The envoy's declaration shatters the throne room like a physical blow, the words hanging heavy in the air. Princess Epicalis stands frozen, her eyes wide as the reality hits her. They actually declared war first. The shock ripples through the room, but a voice cuts through the panic. "Calm down. Why do you think we'd been preparing for war behind?" The king's words offer a grim reassurance, the weight of their secret preparations finally coming to light. Outside the castle walls, the military machine hums with readiness. Soldiers on horseback exchange grim smiles, the reports of Elatria's military movements near the board. Epicalis throws her head back, laughing as the doors creak open behind her. "In any case," she declares, "even if it's earlier than planned, the beginning of war is a joyous occasion." Her excitement hangs in the air, but the older advisor beside her isn't sharing the sentiment. He frowns, asking if it's really necessary to go to war over mere trade issues. The woman turns, her expression shifting to concern as she asks if His Majesty the King truly agreed to this. A nearby courtier gasps, hand flying to his chin in shock, the weight of the question settling over the room like a cold draft. Epicalis grips the advisor's jaw, her fingers digging into his skin as she forces a terrifying smile. "Calm down," she whispers, reminding him that she has been entrusted with full authority in place of her ailing father. He stammers that he is speaking in his father's stead, but she cuts him off. "Look, Yorm," she commands, her gaze locking onto his. "Look into my eyes." The man sweats profusely, his pupils shrinking in terror as he stammers Epicalis. "My lady!" "Yorm!" Epicalis screams, her finger jabbing forward as she commands the rest of the Night Order to mobilize. Yorm stammers, the name dying on his lips. He snaps to attention, screaming back that he obeys. Epicalis throws her head back, manic joy in her eyes, declaring the war to be the start of the fun. "What we feared." The young man whispers, the words spilling out before the plea follows. He stands in the dim room, eyes wide with sudden clarity. Across the floor, a woman in a striped dress holds a tea tray frozen in place. On the bed, a girl with braided hair lies still, her lips moving in a faint, broken whisper. "Hero!" The name hangs heavy in the air, a sorrowful voice echoing into the void, as the time for war draws near. The silence of the room feels like a warning, a quiet tragedy playing out while the world prepares to burn. At the Elatria-Locaris border, a guard warns the group that the crossing is about to close, urging them to hurry if they're heading back to Locaris. Nimros tells them to move fast. The gate guards spot the group approaching, one grumbling that the wares are still unsold while the other calls out a pot seller. Nimros leans in to tease the blonde woman beside him, asking if she's his daughter. She snaps back, telling him he might be middle-aged, but certainly not the father of someone that big. Nimros protests, wondering if he really looks that young. The guard stares back, stunned, asking if Nimros knew the border was closing this whole time. The border guards shout for them to get out of there, ASAP, their urgency cutting through the air. Nimros and Riku wave back, thanking the soldiers and wishing them not to die. Nimros notes that merchants are well informed, explaining why he knew the border was closing. But the guards drop a grim warning. Word is both. Armies are already on the move, and this place will become the front line. They ride away down a long, empty road. Nimros grunts, straining against the weight or the situation, while Like complains on her horse, asking if she really looks that much like a kid. Like bristles at the suggestion, asking if she looks old, or if Freya just looks too young. Gotcha hovers overhead as the group teases that the pair looks more like parent and child than lovers. Like insists that's complicated, she is already 19. The group gasps in unison. 19? Older than Soda and the others, so she really does look young. Like sighs and brushes it off. Riku steers the conversation, asking about the talk that Elatria won't be attacked by demons once the war starts. Is that true? He notes the odds are high, pointing out it has been 50. Riku answers that humans have fought hard to repel them, but maybe not always. Akiris even held back while negotiating to bring Elatria under control, like adds that now it seems they just want to throw human society into chaos. Riku reflects that he used to think demons were trying to destroy humanity. But maybe there are few demons, or maybe there's another reason. He focuses on the current conflict. Either way, they're roundabout. If demons are behind it, then their goal is the battlefield erupts in a flash of steel and flags, a vision of the conflict they're riding into. To make humans wage war against each other? Riku rides on, his mind dissecting the demon's strategy. If that's the goal, they're probably watching from above, feeding on the chaos. Like keeps her eyes forward, agreeing that's one possibility. Riku adds a second layer to the theory. Once war starts, those guys will be too busy to launch attacks. He turns the question over in his mind. Demons get busy when humans go to war? Like asks if he means Akira's? She waves it off. Well, what if Riku's deduction lands heavy on the ridge. If Locaris is right, and Elatria is working for the Demon King, then the demon invasion was just a farce. The theory hangs in the air before Nimros explodes. Hey, are you doubting us? Nimros shouts, his patience snapping. You guys might have faked the evidence and played the victim, can't rule that out, so you don't trust me either. Locaris sure looks suspicious, Nimros grumbles, his eyes narrowing. Maybe the lower ranks don't know. Like offers a quiet counterpoint, but Nimros presses on. Still, if Locaris is on the Demon King's side, why summon the hero, their natural enemy? The logic stumps. From the ridge, the group looks down on a sprawling encampment that swells across the landscape like a dark tide. That's... The realization hits hard. The Locaris army? Nimros stares down, his voice tight. They've come closer to the border than he expected. The numbers are staggering. 3,000, no, maybe 4,000 troops. Like whispers, the Count, her eyes wide. Nimros shouts after him, "Hey, Riku!" But the old man doesn't stop. For now, Nimros mutters, watching the cloak vanish into the distance. Then the realization hits. "Don't tell me you're charging in!" Nimros screams, his face twisting in shock. Riku ignores him, the cloak billowing behind him as he gallops straight for the encampment. "Riku!" The cry tears through the air as the old man charges alone into the dark tide of the Locaris army. Inside Lucaris' castle, the air grows heavy with confrontation. Epicalis leans in, eyes narrowing as she demands, "You two absolutely refuse to participate in the war?" The heroes stand firm in the doorway. "Yes," they reply, as we've said many times. Sota steps forward, voice steady. "If it's to defeat the Demon King, that's one thing, but we won't take part in human conflict." Epicalis bristles, turning her back on them as she argues, "First off, we've only trained for a month. No way we're ready for battle." She spins back around, eyes blazing. "Weren't you the one bragging about—" Sota points a finger at the princess, his voice cutting through the tension. "You summoned us without permission and now want us to kill people?" Mizuki and Kana stand behind him, the weight of their refusal hanging heavy. "There's no reason for us to stay locked up in this castle either," Sota adds, his stance firm. Epicalis stares back, her expression shifting from shock to calculation. "Oh, so you plan to leave this country by force?" she asks, the words dripping with sudden understanding. Sota doesn't blink. "I'm saying that's one of our options." The air in the room drops. Epicalis tilts her head, a shadow crossing her face. The princess's smile doesn't soften the room, it tightens the noose. Sota and Mizuki stand frozen, the air suddenly too thick to breathe. Sota's eyes snap wide, the realization crashing down on him. He stammers, "Options?" The reply comes not from the air, but from a hand. Black nails dig into Kana's chin, forcing her head up. Her eyes are wide with terror. Epicalis's voice cuts through the silence, cold and absolute. "You need to understand that you don't have any." Epicalis grips Kana's chin, her nails digging in as she forces the girl to look up. Her smile is sharp, predatory, as she leans in close to whisper the truth. "You must come to realize that." The air chokes the room with the weight of her threat. Below, the ground shakes violently as hooves pound against the earth, signaling a frantic arrival that cuts through the tension. A commander waits, mind fixed on Futa's intel. Pravas should be in the advance unit. Then a voice cuts the air. Riku rides forward on his horse, waving a baton and shouting a casual greeting. The guards snap to attention, spears raised. "Who goes there?" they demand. Riku doesn't slow down. He declares his name and origin with a grin. "I'm Riku, a man from another world." The soldiers demand the commander. Then one guard freezes, eyes widening. "Riku! Riku!" just nods, checking the defenses. The pass looks legit. Pravas greets Riku with a cheerful shout, "Oh, long time no see!" Riku recognizes him instantly, calling out the name Pravas and confirming the man is alive. Turning back to his own group, Riku asks them to speak up if they know the soldier. The scarfed companion admits he thought Riku was charging in alone and nearly panicked. He stares at the young soldier in shock, muttering that Riku has a son in this world. The companion grumbles that he's been treated like a kid and that his gender was misidentified too. The soldiers demand to know if they are invading Elatria, and Riku's group bluntly confirms that negotiations have broken down. A soldier stammers an apology for the confusion, but Futa cuts him off, snapping back that she is a woman. The conversation shifts to the heroes, with Riku asking where Futa and the others are. Like answers that they are still in the castle. The Lucaris commander reports that the heroes are refusing to fight and won't leave their rooms. Riku expresses relief, glad to hear they are following orders. Pravas assures Riku he's taken the heroes under his direct command, vowing he won't let them fight. Riku smiles, saying sorry, but admitting he's glad someone like him is around. The soldiers hesitate, asking, "So, are you really going to attack?" "What do you mean?" they ask. Pravas turns the question back on them, his suspicion sharp. This war and the hero summoning, he asks if it doesn't strike them as strange. Nimros watches the princess, noting that Lady Epicalis has changed. He asks Riku if he's just going to follow her blindly, admitting he's being honest about his doubts. Maybe it's the burden of leading a nation, he muses, but he's a knight. If his country says fight, he fights. That's all. He shouts at Riku, asking if he's telling him to betray his country. Riku sighs, conceding that he's noble as a knight, I suppose, Riku reveals the intel gathered from Eletria, confirming the nation is drowning in rising monsters and demon attacks. He connects the dots, noting that Locaris raised the trade demands, while Epicalus only hinted at war. The revelation hits hard as he produces a letter from Nimros, proving he has been in contact with the knight. The group stammers in disbelief, questioning his trust in the man before asking when he met Nimros, but Riku holds the proof steady. Riku spurs his horse forward, his voice cutting through the air with finality. Either way, I'm heading back to the castle. He leaves the choice of belief to the others, his words hanging heavy. What you choose to believe, that's up to you. Nimros scrambles to catch up, panic rising in his voice. Ah! Riku! Wait! He screams the name again. Riku! Riku rides on, Nimros shouting from the saddle behind him. Hey! I said, wait! But Like steps forward, her face tight with resolve. You're not getting away! Nimros grins, his armor gleaming as he lunges forward on his horse. Like's eyes widen in shock, her mouth opening in a gasp as the realization hits. She loses her balance, tumbling off her mount and crashing into the dirt below. Nimros screams Like's name, his voice cracking as he watches her tumble from the saddle. He wrestles with the reins, commanding Harrier to fall back, but the horse bucks and groans in protest. Like grits her teeth in frustration, but the shock hits her harder when she sees the horse galloping away without her. She cries out in horror as she's left stranded in the dirt. Riku? Like gasps, the name tearing from her throat as she spots the old man. Nimros hauls her back onto the saddle, armor clinking as they watch him go. Are you hurt? She demands, checking him over. I think the bones are fine. You got lucky, Nimros yells, shaking off the shock of the fall. Riku doesn't look back. He rides on, leaving them in the dust. Nimros grits his teeth, panic rising in his chest. What now? Like cries out beside him. If we can just escape! Nimros thinks, but the thought dies as a laugh cuts through the air. A muscular rider on a dark horse surges forward, grinning wildly. Ha ha! 2 people on that old horse! He mocks, his voice dripping with amusement. No way you're getting away! He closes the distance, his horse thundering past them. Riku rides ahead in the distance, a small figure against the horizon. The new rider overtakes Nimros and Like, his eyes narrowing as he locks onto Nimros. Resonant throws his head back, grinning wide enough to show every tooth. My name is Resonant, he shouts, his voice booming over the wind. Commander of the Crimson Sword Knights of the Kingdom of Locaris, Resonant. Nimros stares back, jaw tight, the weight of the title settling over the field. The air crackles with a promise, old man versus old man. A clash is inevitable. A cry for Mizuki echoes through the stone walls as the heroes remain trapped in their room. One of them screams that they should have gotten stronger, but the other admits they couldn't move an inch. The weight of their helplessness presses down on them as the war continues outside. Mizuki gasps for air as a hand tightens around her throat, the blonde woman looming over her with a cruel smile. Now! What shall I do? Mizuki asks, her voice trembling. The woman tightens her grip, offering a cruel ultimatum, fight Eletria or leave this girl to die and escape. Futa clenches his fists, realization dawning. Just like Riku said, he mutters, the weight of the betrayal settling in. Kana stares in horror, piecing together the trap. They summoned even Mizuki, who isn't a hero, she whispers, to make us obey them. Mizuki forces a smile through the pain, pushing them away. I'm fine! Futa! Kana watches the blonde woman holding Mizuki, her mind racing with a sudden realization. The princess doesn't know Mizuki can use magic, but if they don't act, the girl is doomed. Kana trusts that Mizuki must have a plan. The others watch from the side, calculating the odds. If they catch the woman off guard, there should be an opening. The villain tightens her grip on Mizuki's throat, the name tearing from someone's lips in desperation. She demands an answer from the captives, shouting that the heroes need to choose. The group responds with a chilling agreement, understood. Futa sets a hard line, sweat beading on his brow as he demands a guarantee. If you promise not to harm Mizuki, he says, the deal is on. The villain watches, expression shifting from stern to a chilling smile. Mizuki cuts through the tension, stepping forward with a resolution that silences the room. I will participate in the war. She volunteers herself, taking the burden off Futa. As long as you obey quietly, the blonde woman promises, I will treat Mizuki with courtesy. The older woman nods in approval, glad they understand the terms. Futa and Mizuki turn their backs on the villains and walk away, leaving the deal sealed and the war. Futa steps forward, his voice steady as he tells the blonde woman he will explain the next steps through the minister. Mizuki cuts in, telling them to just take care of it. The minister echoes the sentiment, dismissing them with a simple order. The blonde woman locks eyes on Mizuki, her smile widening into something predatory. "Hero," she whispers, the word hanging heavy in the air. High above, the clouds part for a single cry. Resonant. Resonant grins, his teeth sharp as he leans forward in the saddle. He calls out to Nimros, recalling the name with a mocking tone, asking if that was the name Nimros was chasing. Nimros confirms it, his voice tight, admitting that was indeed the name. Resonant laughs, the sound cutting through the wind as he mocks Nimros for chasing after a high school girl's butt, making those pig noises. Nimros stands his ground, but the laughter hangs heavy in the air. The surrounding knights close in. Resonant and his crimson sore knights surround Nimros and Like, their horses forming a wall of steel and muscle. Nimros and Like are trapped, their escape route cut off by the sheer number of knights. The air crackles with tension. Resonant grins, his eyes sharp as he locks onto the old man. "You said you're Riku from another world. Even the princess said your mouth works well." Nimros watches from the saddle, frowning at the stranger. "This smooth-talking man, where do you think you're going in the middle of a war?" Resonant leans forward, his tone shifting to something colder. "But you see, to minister you are." Riku cuts him off, waving his baton casually. "The minister told me I could return any time and even gave me a pass. Back to the castle." The air freezes. Resonant finishes the sentence, his voice dropping to a threat. Resonant hammers the air, his grin sharp as he declares the end for Riku. "I don't know how you escaped the assassins, but if you are left alive, it ends here." Minister Yuam watches the chaos, his voice cutting through the noise as his ninjas stand ready. "I see. One of your subordinates. So that explains the stupidity too. The weapon crashes down, steel meeting, steel in a violent spark. Nimros, hast! The Nimros soldiers are technically different. Nimros ass flinches aspirations. Yells back, his voice cracking with different. Nimros yells back, his voice cracking with desperation. Ikea commands, turning his head to the small dragon hidden his cloak. Ikea nearby leans in close to Nimros, her voice sharp with disbelief. "You're not going to take him down?" she asks, her eyes wide. "Killing is easy, but—" She trails off, the weight of the situation pressing on her. Nimros grits his teeth, his face twisting in frustration. "I can't consider the entire Night Order enemies," he shouts, his voice echoing off the surroundings. Nimros, Order, enemy. Steel screams against wood as Resonance blade slams into Riku's baton, sparks flying in a violent arc. The knight's eyes bulge, the shock of the impact rattling his teeth. "Stopped my sword with one hand?" he roars, disbelief tearing through his voice. Beside him, Nimros watches the display, his own grip tightening on his reins. "Heavier than I thought," he mutters, the weight of the old man's strength pressing down on him. "Can I actually do it?" Nimros wonders, his resolve wavering under the sheer force on display. Riku remains calm atop his horse, the baton held steady against the onslaught, while Resonant realizes Riku isn't targeting his horse, wondering if the old man wants a fair fight. He screams and swings his blade with renewed fury. Nimros watches the clash, thinking Riku is a superhuman fool for his recklessness. He shouts for Riku to move forward, and suddenly a massive rock barrier erupts in front of the horse. The rock barrier slams down, blocking Resonant's path and forcing his horse to skid to a halt. Nimros yells over the chaos, realizing the burden on his mount, "Two on Harrier!" He glances back, grimacing at the strain. "Sorry for making you do this at your age." "Like doesn't flinch, I know." Nimros's eye widens, focus locking in as the horse surges forward, speed lines blurring the world around them. Arrows scream through the air as Nimros and his companion surge forward on the horse, the enemy knights raining fire from behind. "Archery! Riku!" Nimrod shouts, his voice cracking with urgency as he feels the weight of the arrows closing in. Shh! He grits out, the impact of the situation pressing down on him. Nimrod turns his head, eyes blazing with sudden resolve. "It's obvious we can fight now," he declares, his hand pointing forward with absolute certainty. The female rider beside him doesn't hesitate, her eyes locking onto his. "No holding back," she counters, the challenge hanging in the wind. Nimrod grabs the reins. Resonant looks down from above, sword in hand, eyes widening as the name Windlancer echoes in the air. A massive vortex of wind erupts below, spiraling violently and swallowing the space around Nimrod and Like clings to the edge of the storm, her hair whipping in the gale as the wind deflects the incoming arrows. The sheer force of the barrier halts the enemy's assault, leaving Resonant staring at the impossible display of power rising from the ground. Resonant's eyes bulge as the wind barrier roars past him, the sheer force knocking the breath from his lungs. "What?" he stammers, the shock cutting through his arrogance. He watches the riders vanish into the gale, his face darkening with disbelief. "Impossible! Magic!" he screams, the word ripping from his throat as he recognizes the power blocking his men. Behind him, the archers hesitate, but the order cuts through the hesitation. "Keep attacking!" Resonant commands, his voice raw. "Don't falter!" The arrows scream into the storm, relentless and desperate. The wind barrier screams, a spiraling vortex that catches the enemy volley mid-flight. Arrows shatter against the invisible wall, leaving Nimrod and riding clear through the gale. A knight on horseback freezes, mouth agape in shock. The arrows won't reach because of the wind? Resonant grits his teeth, sword raised high, his face twisting in fury as he realizes the storm is doing the work. He raises his sword, fury burning in his eyes, but the riders are already gone. Resonant's eyes widen as the realization hits him. He shouts that only Futa and Kana are supposed to be anything other than human, then smirks that assumptions on the battlefield can get you killed. He lunges, grabbing Riku's armor and screaming, "Old man!" Riku clashes his blade against Resonance, the old man's resolve hardening as he thinks, "I'm still." Resonant absorbed the impact and recognized the attacker's youth, laughing at the strategy before the young man screamed the command to end it. Resonant's face twisted in absolute panic as the truth of his defeat crashed down. Nimrod drove his sword upward with a roar, the blade catching the light as he followed through. Like watched from behind, her eyes wide with the shock of seeing the impossible happen. The name Crimson Blade echoed through the chaos as, cleaved through the knight's defense with lethal precision. The impact shattered Resonant's confidence, leading him staring into the face of defeat. Like's face was a mask of fierce resolve as she delivered the crushing blow. Resonant's scream tore through the air, blood spraying from his mouth as the impact shattered his composure. Riku stood silhouetted against the sky, delivering the final judgment. Resonant plummeted through the air, his armor clattering as he crashed toward the ground. Nimrod and shouted his name from the saddle, the urgency in their voices cracking. Riku stood with his back turned, admitting he knew they weren't ordinary, but this speed was beyond expectation. Resonant crashed into the dirt, a ragged groan tearing from his throat as he gasped for air. He lifted his head, eyes wide with disbelief, muttering that he shouldn't be alive with wounds like this. Nimrod beside him gasped the word, "Captain!" the shock shattering his voice. A fist slammed into the wall, the impact echoing with a sharp crack. A young man beside it clenched his jaw, pointing forward with furious determination. Meanwhile, in the cells, the phone began to ring, startling the girl standing nearby. Mizuki lifted the receiver, her breath catching as a voice crackled through the line. A cheerful chirp squealed from the other end, followed by a stunned realization that she had a smartphone. She explained she had kept the device hidden just in case, a bad feeling guiding her instincts. Torches flickered along the stone walls of a dim corridor, but there were no castle guards patrolling the halls. Mizuki held the phone tight, asking if the boy knew the location. The boy snapped back, demanding why she didn't blast a wicked princess away with magic. Mizuki screamed for death, a desperate plea echoing in the dark cell. Outside, Two figures froze, recognizing the voice instantly. Inside the prison block, Mizuki revealed her true hand, admitting she wasn't helpless and could escape any time. Mizuki froze in the dark cell, a voice cutting through the silence. "You can escape?" they asked, the words dripping with disbelief. Mizuki stared, her eyes widening behind her glasses as recognition flooded her mind. Hooves slammed into the dirt, kicking up dust as the ground shook beneath the weight of speed. Nimrose drove the horse forward, like clinging tight behind him while Gotcha buzzed near the mane. Ahead on the open road, Riku rode alone, urging Harrier to run like the wind toward Locales. Riku reined in the horse, patting the beast's neck with a gentle rhythm. Like stepped forward, her expression tight with concern, as she asked if the animal could make it to the royal capital. Like dropped a bombshell of intel, revealing that Mizuki was apparently detained in Locales' castle. The wind howled as Mizuki's name cut through the silence. Nimrose shouted into the phone, urgency in his voice as he told her he heard everything from Kana and the others. Like leaned in from the saddle, eyes wide, asking if she was safe. Mizuki pressed the phone to her ear, her eyes wide as she scanned the jail cell behind her. Merchants of this country were locked up there, the realization hitting her hard. Mizuki asked if a man named Thomas was among them, clarifying that Thomas was Ted's father. Riku shouted into the phone, calling out to Harrier and announcing the master had been found. Mizuki gripped the device on the other end, breathless, asking how he could possibly know about her. Riku explained that if the merchants decreased, the flow of food would drop too, justifying the war. Mizuki stared at the bedridden monarch, the realization hitting her hard. "The sick king is also here," she whispered into the phone. She tried using healing magic, but his weakness was too severe and her magic wasn't enough. Two prisoners with sacks over their heads shouted in unison, their voices cracking with excitement. It was under the castle. A bearded man beside them confirmed the discovery, pointing out a mechanism on the angel statue in the courtyard. Riku smiled, his confidence cutting through the static as he told them he would come get them for sure. The pieces were finally coming together, a race against time that should settle it. Riku thought to himself as they rode toward the capital. Like called out, her voice bright with relief as they confirmed they were heading into the royal capital of Locales. Riku grinned, his confidence cutting through the static of the road. Nimrose froze, hand over his mouth, realizing he was smiling too. Like stared silent as Nimrose turned his horse and called out to her. "All right, hie up!" Nimrose urged the horse forward, his arms wrapped securely around Like on the saddle. Like leaned into him, eyes closed in a happy smile, thinking that he would cling to her like this. Then the sky darkened, the clouds shifting ominously as the weather started to get worse. "We're almost at the capital!" Riku shouted, the road blurring beneath Harrier. Nimrose gripped the reins, hoping the horse held out, but the strain was too much. Like watched from behind, silent, while Gotcha clung to the horse's head, witness to the struggle. Even so, the horse pushed on, hooves pounding the earth until the legs trembled and buckled. He was already at his limit, Nimrose clinging to the saddle as the beast stumbled to a halt. Like stepped forward, eyes wide, asking what they should do now. Riku patted Harrier's neck, his voice ringing out with defiance against Nimrose's earlier hesitation. He declared that Harrier was his proud partner and he wasn't abandoning him. Nimrose and Like turned and began walking down the road, leaving the exhausted horse behind. Nimrose pressed a heavy bag of cash into the farmer's hands, insisting he had plenty to spare. He ordered the man to keep Harrier and take the money, pointing out the farmhouse with the roofed well. Nimrose asked if they found Ted's father, and Like confirmed they hadn't saved him yet. Nimrose flashed a confident grin, telling Freya he was counting on her with his partner. Nimrose turned and started running down the road, his thoughts grumbling that running long distance at his age was rough. He called out over his shoulder, instructing her to meet him at the Adventurers Guild. The road stretched out before Nimrose, but he didn't wait for a response. He sprinted forward, his boots pounding the dirt as he pushed his aging body to the limit. Freya watched him go, her mind reeling at the weight of the responsibility just placed on her shoulders. Freya stood before Riku, her grip tightening on the staff as she asked if she should have real weapons instead. She worried that without practice, she might accidentally kill someone, or worse, get caught and make the whole mission pointless. Night fell over the town, the sky begging for the darkness to hurry up and arrive. The guild sign hung silent in the gloom. Then the sliding door burst open, and Riku stepped in, wrapped in a heavy blanket against the chill. Freya beamed with relief, her "yes" echoing the chaos that just unfolded. With the errand wrapped up, the group shifted focus. Like asked why Riku went ahead to the Adventurers Guild first, but he brushed it off as a small task now complete. 2 gatekeepers stood watch at the archway, their faces familiar. Panic flared beside him, wondering what to do with just 2 guards. Riku didn't falter, stepping forward and raising a hand in a casual wave. Riku raised his hand, fingers splayed, and whispered a single word: hypnosis. A pulse of magic rippled out. The 2 gatekeepers wobbled, their spears clattering to the stone floor. Riku looked back at her, calm as ever, and walked through the open gate. Riku strode through the gate without looking back, dismissing the guard's fate with a casual, "That's the point." Like hesitated, glancing back at the unconscious sentries and asking if anyone would notice something was wrong. They moved into the courtyard, like peeking around a hedge to confirm their target. Riku stood before the massive winged statue, confirming the target without hesitation. Like stumbled back, panic rising in her throat as she cried out. Riku just shrugged, admitting the oversight with a casual shrug. Then the stone face snapped back, shouting that it was called charm. Stone exploded outward as a monstrous face tore through the wall, a nightmare of spikes and shadow looming over the courtyard. Debris rained down as Riku, Like, and Gotcha stood frozen below, staring up at the devastation. The sheer scale of the beast left them breathless. A sudden demon attack shattered the sky, a colossal eye and spiked maw screaming down. Riku's gaze hardened, eyes narrowing against the threat. Speed lines streaked across the void as the world blurred into motion. Steel clashed against the shadowy beast as Riku and Like struck in unison, Gotcha hovering above the fray. A voice cut through the noise, identifying the nightmare as something known from the past. Riku asked if the name held true here, but the beast itself answered with a sharp yes. Wasn't that draw a bit too fast? Riku mused, watching the chaos settle. He spotted Freya's hand on her hilt in that split second, a flash of steel in the tension. Then the realization hit him. Oh, he looked down the stairs and saw it worked out. Mizuki shook in the dark, fear gripping her throat as she waited in the shadows. Riku and Leek swept the corridor, voices cutting through the silence, calling out her name. Mizuki answered from behind the bars, her relief palpable as she thanked them. Mizuki clutched her chest, breathless, thanking her rescuers and asking who they were. The blonde knight stepped forward, introducing herself as Freya of the Eratoria Knight Order. Nimros grinned in the shadows, signaling the next move with a sharp, "Now then." A man wrapped in a thick scarf grinned with sharp teeth, his voice cutting through the crowd. The phone rang, the screen flashing Takayanagi Riku-san. A young man in a uniform dropped to his knees, screaming into the receiver. Riku confirmed their location on the phone, announcing they had reached the courtyard and linked up with Mizuki. Like took over the call, demanding Mizuki get out and meet at the main gate in 10 minutes. Nearby, a door creaked open, catching Freya's attention. Freya's heart raced, admitting this was the first time they had tried to sneak out on their own. Ahead, a shadowy creature loomed in a doorway while they scanned the dark corridor behind it. A guard discovered the gatekeeper was down, questioning if the attack was real. The castle corridors echoed with the frantic footsteps of a whole company of soldiers hunting for the missing group. Hiding in the shadows, Mizuki and Lake whispered to each other, eyes wide with worry. But as Riku and Lake stepped forward, a figure blocked their path. A stern man in a crested robe stood flanked by armed guards, his eyes narrowing as he called out, shifted to the dark of night, where Riku and his companions found themselves surrounded by a large crowd of people. The weight of the hostage situation settled over the group. Riku mused that if so many merchants vanished, the citizens would notice the anomaly soon enough. Mizuki countered that starting a war might not be a bad read. Mizuki suddenly shouted out, "Hey, Otherworlder!" Then a man's face filled the frame, grinning as he said, "Oh, you came!" The guildmaster marveled at the crowd, impressed by how quickly so many adventurers gathered. The young man who called Riku admitted it was a lie. Riku stepped forward, admitting he had to lie to get them moving. The guildmaster scanned the crowd, his eyes locking onto a familiar face. Riku stepped forward, calling out to him. The bald man grabbed the bearded man in the cap, shaking him with disbelief. But the real shock came from the older man beside Riku, who hugged him tightly. That was unbelievable. The truth crashed down. Hostages were held captive in the castle's dungeon. Mizuki shouted, snapping the crowd into action. The guildmaster stepped forward, voice cutting through the noise. The man in black accepted the chaos and led the charge. Asked what they were doing now, her voice tight with uncertainty, but Nimros was already moving. Kana froze, her glasses reflecting the dim light as she realized something chilling. From the shadows, a sinister laugh echoed through the air. The laughter cuts through the night air, sharp and cruel. A massive figure looms over the castle walls while soldiers raise their spears. The voice accuses the heroes of abandoning Mizuki, the hostage. Mizuki screams for everyone to get back as the castle guards close in. A spear flies through the air with a thunderous impact. Riku stands before a massive tornado, calm despite the chaos. Soldiers scream Riku's name until his face looms large in the moonlight. The man demands to know why Riku is here. The guards whisper about the powerful magic that just leveled the courtyard. The cloaked man tosses a scroll into the air. He asks if Riku gave him a travel permit. Riku realizes he's alive and steps forward with cold fury. Confusion hangs in the air over their connection. A crowd spills out from the castle entrance, voices rising in relief. "We finally caught up," they shout. Panic ripples through the ranks as the dust settles. Recognition cuts through the fear as voices rise in shock. Riku stands amidst the chaos with a confident smile. The minister demands an explanation that makes sense. Riku realizes they gathered everyone here to make them witnesses. He decides to confront the ringleader. Moonlight spills over the woman in black, where spears are leveled at her throat. The minister gasps, his composure shattering. "Princess Achilles of the magic darkness!" Mizuki freezes. The minister stares in horror as the truth settles. Mizuki stumbles back, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. The princess of Locaris is Achilles. A flaming quill burns bright against the dark. Chaos swirls around the edges as the tale takes a breath. The woman in black asks for confirmation. Riku points at the girl and the small dragon perched on her head. The woman screams, her composure cracking. Achilles grins maniacally, blood trickling from her lip. She screams into the night, unleashing a torrent of destruction. Fire erupts from her hands, swallowing the courtyard. A wall of fire tears through the night, screaming with the force of 1,000 suns. Epicalus hangs suspended within the inferno. Mizuki stares, her mind reeling as the final pieces click into place. The woman screams, hair wild and eyes wide against the dark. Riku stands with his back turned, hooded and silent. Her face twists in rage, screaming that he's just an otherworlder. Swords slice through the air past Riku's hooded back. Mizuki and Gotcha question if the princess is fake. Achilles declares, "Either way, she's the enemy." The woman asks when he finally realized the truth. Riku recalls the signs that pointed to Locaris. He reveals the twist that cut through the logic, her expression. Riku seals the case with a smug grin. The expression when looking down on people was the same. Achilles stares, eyes wide, the mask slipping as the realization crashes over her. Achilles laughs, her manic grin stretching wide as she revels in the chaos. Riku raises his sword, the steel gleaming in the moonlight as he demands the truth. Mizuki and Nimros step forward with trembling voices. Achilles shrieks, her composure shattering as she demands the extermination of humanity. She spreads her arms wide, reveling in the dark truth. Mizuki gasps, the pieces clicking into place. Riku leans in, the challenge hanging heavy in the air. Achilles falters, her voice dropping to a whisper. The merchants freeze, the realization hitting like a physical blow. Achilles snarls, her composure shattering as the truth lands. She turns her back to the group, declaring with cold finality that everyone here is going to die anyway. She grabs Nimros by the collar and drags him into the fight. A violent tearing sound shreds the silence as a figure's back erupts with wild, spiky hair. Mizuki and Nimros freeze, her eyes widening as she stammers his name in shock. A single, unblinking eye stares out from the darkness as the soldiers reveal their true nature. Panic shatters the ranks as the realization hits. A shadow lunges forward with a violent strike. A dark claw slams into Nimros, the impact driving him back. Spikes tear through his back, tearing through his clothes. Nimros crashes to the ground, crushed beneath the monster's weight. Mizuki grips a fallen comrade, her voice trembling as she accuses the man standing nearby. Across the battlefield, soldiers clash with shadowy beasts. Achilles acknowledges the man's insight. The woman with the eye patch stares in disbelief, her voice cracking as she declares that they are unharmed. The long-haired woman reaches out, her hand pressing against a face. "Too bad, Luvan-san." A massive strike shatters the darkness as Riku's blade connects with a dark figure. Nimros thanks someone for their reliability. Mizuki seizes the moment, pointing forward with a fierce grin. Epicalus declares, "Now then, sorry for the wait." She stands tall, a fallen figure at her feet. Luvan demands to know everything about demons. Achilles leans in, her voice dripping with cruel amusement. Before Nimros can process it, Achilles lashes out. Riku meets the strike, diving forward with terrifying speed. A blade tip points downward, cold and final. Achilles screams, her composure cracking. Riku stands silhouetted against the moon, sword in hand. Either way doesn't matter to me. Moonlight washes over Riku as he delivers a crushing truth. Long ago, for the sake of the world, I killed that girl. Achilles freezes, her eyes widening in pure horror. A soldier whispers in the dark, eyes wide with shock. Mizuki answers, her voice trembling. "Gotcha!" hovers nearby as she turns to the blonde girl beside her. Riku grips his sword, the metal gleaming in the moonlight as he delivers a chilling verdict. He admits he has never even met the real princess. The blonde woman recoils, her shock turning to panic. Riku raises his sword against the moon, his voice devoid of mercy. He closes his eyes, a final goodbye hanging in the cold air. She grits her teeth, eyes wide with shock and fury. The blade descends in a blur of violence, meeting flesh and steel with a deafening roar. Impact ripples outward as the strike connects. Gotcha hovers, her tiny form dwarfed by the shock. A man with short dark hair grins broadly, flashing a casual "Yo!" into the chaos. The nation's Protector Knight commander enters the battle. "So you came, Pravath." The battle halts as a new force interrupts the flow. The commander arrives, declaring the situation is now under control. A bystander blinks in confusion, asking what power speaks here. The shadows shift as allies converge on the group. The nation's Protector Knight commander steps into the fray with a casual grin. He locks eyes with the blonde knight, noting his arrival with a smirk. "You finally made it, Pravath!" A guttural grinding noise rips through the dark grass. Two armored knights freeze, their eyes wide with confusion. The shadows tear open, revealing a nightmare. Now that you have seen this, the threat hangs heavy in the night. Riku stands over the battlefield, explaining the horror to the nation's Protector Knight commander. Pravath watches, the realization hitting him hard. The commander stands with his back to the chaos, sword drawn. He pivots, eyes blazing, and points his weapon at the blonde woman shielding behind him. Riku stands silent for a heartbeat, head bowed low. Amanda screams, declaring herself a knight of the kingdom and the royal family. She clashes against the commander's blade, her voice cracking with desperation. Steel rings out as their blades lock in the night. The clash rings out as Amanda's blade meets steel. Riku meets her strike, his eyes hard, promising he will find a way to save her regardless. Pravath stands over Amanda, his smirk widening. Pravath's boot connects with a sickening crunch, driving Amanda backward through the air. She screams, the impact sending her skidding across the ground. "Where?" she stammers. The steel at her throat isn't just metal, it's the weight of her own disbelief. Amanda kneels, sweat dripping down her face as she realizes the gap between them is insurmountable. Riku leans in, his grin sharp and unbothered. Pravath admits it would be impossible for a regular person. Riku explains that in his previous world he couldn't tell if the power was unique to him. The lesser demon shrieks. Riku drives his fist into the darkness, the impact cracking against the lesser demon's form. He explains that he can easily boost his physical abilities to a level far beyond any of the people of this world. Riku swings his fist into the darkness, declaring he's capable of superhuman moves like this. He thanks Pravath for giving him such a fine sword. The brickwork crumbles under the force of his strike. Riku steps in, his voice cutting through the tension. Amanda forces the words out, her voice trembling. She squeezes her eyes shut, the plea tearing from her throat. "Gotcha," vanishes into the dark. Then a desperate plea shatters the air. "Please kill me." Mizuki reaches out. Nimra's freezes. They know that voice. Epicalis stands in the shadows. Her forehead mark glows. She clutches her head. Her body betrays her. The demon roars. "How are you resisting?" Epicalis grits her teeth. A curse tears from her throat. "Damn you!" The demon murmurs. Consciousness inside the body means there is a way. Amanda screams. "This is why I must save her." Pravath steps forward, hand on his hilt. The possessed princess has no choice. He reveals Kinyu from the attack earlier. Pravath leans in, a sharp grin. "You are weaker than an Elatoria." The princess's voice cuts in, cold and clinical. "If you stay in, you won't stand a chance." The demon snarls back. Threat hangs heavy. "I will kill you both, even now that I know she is fine." She spreads her arms. Darkness burns in her eyes. You have no choice but to fight for survival. Epicalis stands with arms spread. The demon bristles with irritation. Everything you say is annoying. Her face twists in rage. The mark on her forehead glows. A smug smile curls her lips. "Dying with the princess is fine just to spite you." Riku stands with his hood pulled low. "But I don't dislike that part of you." The voice hardens. "Don't let her out. Keep her trapped. Kill her inside my body." Her hair whips wildly. The struggle tears through her form. Pravath yells. Epicalis cries out her own name, sharp and desperate. Riku stands calm, his expression unreadable. He leans in. A smirk plays on his lips. "That look suits your personality better." The air shifts. The enemy's true form reveals. Akira's stands before them, wings spread wide, a terrifying silhouette against the night. Akira's smiles. "Is that a compliment?" she asks. Pravath holds the princess. Urgency presses in. A voice shouts for safety. The realization hits. A woman gasps. "Akira's!" Mizuki stares in horror. "A high-ranking demon? All right, let's start over." Akira screams, dives from the dark, wings spread like a predator. Pravath raises his sword. The clash rings out in a burst of sparks. He holds the line. Muscles strain. She doesn't stop. She presses in. "Since our last fight, I have done some thinking." The threat hangs in the silence. Akira's plummets, wings spread wide. The battle concludes. The story takes a breath. The air goes still. The battle fades. The air shreds with a violent slash. Like and Mizuki scream Riku's name. Panic rises in their throats as the impact lands. Akira's stands frozen, her true form exposed, eyes wide with shock. She faces him. Riku stands silent. His cloak shifts in the wind. Nimros is thrown. A startled shout tears from his throat. The earth bears the mark of the strike, a jagged scar where the blade sliced the air. Riku wipes sweat. A relieved grin cuts through the tension. He admits that was too close. Mizuki calls his name. Panic fades. Like exhales, breath catches in her throat. She realizes the impossible. The demon slipped past Riku's defenses. She watches from the side, eyes wide with horror. Akira's managed to get behind him. The night sky swallows the moonlight. A towering silhouette of shadow and wings looms over Riku's back. The air hums with a menacing vibration. Then the demon's face appears. A manic grin stretches across her features. She declares she's just getting started. Her voice sharp and hungry. She demands time to pick up the pace. The battle isn't over. Riku stands firm, sword drawn tight against the invisible storm. The air shatters with unseen blows crashing around him. A cruel laugh rips through the noise from the darkness. Can you even keep up? Riku grits his teeth. Sweat flies. Nimros takes the blow. The slash lands. Clothes tear under the force. Fabric rips at the leg and torso. He grits his teeth against the pain. Riku watches. The demon lunges forward, growling low. Nimros stares in shock. The impact hits harder. Nimros parries the strike. Sparks fly from his steel. The creature's tail coils tight, a dark serpent wrapping him in death. The whip cracks. Armor shatters. Nimros grits his teeth. High above, the demon watches the carnage. Her presence looms like a storm. Riku stares. His voice cuts through the tension. He admits that in another world, this strength wouldn't just be a high-ranking demon. It would be an executive working right under the Demon King himself. The shock ripples through the air. Whoa! Hold on, someone whispers. The demon's face twists. Stripes glow in the dark. She sneers that Riku is bluffing. A figure bursts from the shadows. Wings flare as she dives toward the fight. "I'm here," she calls out. Riku turns. Relief floods his eyes. He shouts her name. "Li She!"